temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen.
This House is in session. Minutes of the meeting held on Friday, February 16, 2024, to be deferred. Honourable for Christchurch West.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that the minutes of the meeting held on Friday, February 16, 2024 to be deferred.
Questions that the aforementioned minutes be deferred. All those honourable members in favour, please say aye. Aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it. The aforementioned minutes are hereby deferred.
Announcements by Your Honor, the Speaker. Messages from Her Excellency the President. Petitions, papers.
Honourable for Christchurch East Central.
Mr. Speaker, I'm commanded to lay the Barbados Estimates of Revenue and Expenditure 2024-25, the Schedule of Personal Emoluments 2024 to 2025, and to give notice of the appropriation.
Government notices.
Honourable for Christchurch East Central.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to give notice of the first reading of the Appropriation Bill 2024.
Notices of questions, reports from select committees, first readings of bills.
Honourable for Christchurch East Central.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that this bill be read the first time.
Second. Bill. This bill, honourable member.
Appropriation Bill 2024.
Questions that the aforementioned bill be read the first time. All those honourable members in favour, please say aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it.
Statements by ministers, congratulatory and/or obituary speeches, personal explanations, motions for leave of absence, oral replies to questions, notices of motions for the adjournment of the House on matters of urgent public importance, orders of the day.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move suspension of standing orders 6, 16, 18, 20, 42, 5, 43, and 44 for the remainder of today's sitting.
Questions that the aforementioned standing order be suspended for the remainder of the day's sitting. All those honourable members in favour, please say aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it. The aforementioned standing orders are hereby suspended for the remainder of the day's sitting.
Government business, sir.
Government business is the order of the day.
Order number 7, sir. In the name of the Honourable Minister of Home Affairs and Information, to move the second reading of the Caribbean Community Movement of Skill National Bill 2024.
Honourable member for Christchurch East.
Mr. Speaker, we're here again as we fine-tune the philosophy, sir, of CARICOM leaders over the past 25 years when they sought to create a CARICOM single market and economy. successive leaders of Barbados have placed different emphasis on the ultimate goal of free movement, sir. We all know the champion that the former Prime Minister of Barbados, when Arthur, was in relation to CARICOM and Caribbean integration. We all know, sir, the champion that our current Prime Minister, the Honourable Mayor Motley, has been in respect of the fight on behalf of Caribbean people and also Caribbean integration. And I guess successive governments, sir, have towed the line, whether in actual support or by lip service, to the concept of the freedom of movement and full Caribbean integration, sir. So the bill we have before us is just an attempt to clarify some definitions, incorporate them into our actual domestic legislation, sir, and work towards what is effectively a living document. It might be better served, sir, if I take us through the history of what it is that we have before us, the whole concept of skilled nationals, and bring us forward to see how it started, the iterations it went through, and where we are today that led to the amendment. It is necessary, sir, to provide the context for those who may not know. So, sir, the movement of CARICOM skilled nationals is one of 5 regimes of the CARICOM single market economy. So Article 46 of the revised Treaty of Chaguaramas speaks to the movement of skilled nationals within CARICOM, and it seeks to allow certain categories of persons to secure gainful employment in other member states without the need for a work permit. And Article 6 outlines the 5 categories of persons. But over time, sir, this list has been increased by decisions of the Conference of the Heads of Government. So in 2003, sir, the agreement at the intersessional meeting of the conference heads agreed that member states should focus specifically on completing legal, regulatory, and administrative arrangements to give effect to the free movement of, and this is where it started, to the free movement of graduates, musicians, artists, and sports persons. So the first iteration, sir, was aimed at recognizing categories of skilled persons, which included graduates, musicians, artists, and sports persons. And the member states were supposed to try to ensure that their laws and their administrative arrangements were in compliance by the 1st of August 2023 to achieve the free movement of the persons in those categories. 3 years later, sir, at the 17th intersessional meeting, the conference agreed that the category should be expanded to include the following new categories of CARICOM skilled nationals, and these included, sir, artisans, hospitality workers, domestics, nurses who are not university graduates, because nurses, sir, that were university graduates were caught in the first iteration, musicians, artists, and sports persons. Nurses who are not university graduates and teachers. And officials in member states undertook, sir, to do this in a short space of time. But, sir, we know we had some delays. Some states move faster than others. In some instances, there was a lack of political will. In some instances, there was a lack of capacity. But the framework was there to accommodate certain persons, and we see in the iteration. Sir, in 2008, another 2 years later, the conference recalled its decision that the right to free movement must be granted to teachers and nurses who are non-graduates from July 2006. So we put in some deadlines on it. In all member states other than Antigua and Barbuda. Antigua and Barbuda, sir, refused to come on board in this respect. Artisans, with the launch of the Caribbean Vocational Qualifications, or the CVQs, this should be in place from the 19th of October 2007 in all member states. And holders of associate degrees and equivalents from 31st December 2007 in all member states, sir. A year later, it was recognized that there were some challenges, that although there were intermittent challenges, it was described as, regarding the free movements of graduates, artists, media workers, musicians, sports persons, teachers, nurses, holders of associate degrees, and artisans with a CVQ, that although it was generally being implemented satisfactorily, there were some slight issues. But it was also agreed then, sir, in 2009, that household domestics who attained a CVQ or equivalent qualification will be allowed to move with effect from the 1st of January 2010. And this decision brought the total number of categories for skilled nationals to 10. The number of categories, sir, was further increased in 2018. We're seeing the evolution as we started to put in qualifications and measurable qualifications. The categories of skill capable of being determined, sir, were increased, and it was accepted and agreed that full movement should be granted to these persons. And as I said, in 2018, it was further increased, sir, to include agricultural workers and security guards, and that these additional categories were to be administratively facilitated by the 20th of February 2019 and implemented by the 31st of July 2019. So in 2019, as well, it was agreed that the movement of agricultural workers and security guards under the CSME skills regime should be facilitated administratively by December 2019, and subject to the urgent finalization of the definition and qualification criteria. Now, there was some hold-up. Well, the agreement was there in principle. There was some hold-up as to what this definition actually includes. What should be the categories of qualifications? What should actually stand as a qualifying mark based either on a certificate or experience? And sir, by subsequent decisions, the heads of government of CARICOM have agreed that there should be free movement of persons in the following categories, and these are now the full categories up to now. University graduates, media workers, sports persons, musicians, artists, nurses, teachers, artisans, holders of associate degrees, household domestics, agricultural workers, and security guards. Now, sir, Barbados has enshrined these categories of skilled nationals in the Caribbean Community Movement of Skilled Nationals Act, Cap 186A, that facilitates the movement of all the agreed categories of workers. Now, sir, the amendments over time, the consequential amendments were made to the Immigration Act, Cap 190, and the Barbados Accreditation Council Act. And it is perhaps useful at this point to take you through exactly, so what I gave you is a history of the evolution of the categories from when it first started, limited 4 or 5 categories, to the full classifications that I just read, the full categories I just read. Sir, while we have made the legislative changes, it is now necessary for us to bring these changes in line with the evolving definitions as agreed by the heads. So the most recent definitions have been in relation to agricultural workers, domestics, and security guards, sir. I will give you, sir, what the original definition was, and then follow with what the current definition is, and you'll understand, sir, why the change in definition was necessary to reflect the reality that we're dealing with, sir. So previously, sir, a household domestic meant a person who holds a CVQ or an equivalent qualification in domestic cleaning, domestic help, or domestic housekeeping. That was the sum total of the definition. A person who holds a CVQ or an equivalent qualification in domestic cleaning, domestic help, or domestic housekeeping. So this has now been expanded to the following definition. A domestic worker is a person engaged in domestic work within an employment relationship and includes a person who conducts functions such as sweeping, vacuuming, cleaning, washing and polishing, taking care of household linen, purchasing supplies, preparing food, serving meals, and various other domestic duties for the household within private residential homes. So this is what the average agent would say maid work. So it includes what we consider, or what is generally considered to be the definition locally of what a domestic is, someone who performs maid work. But it does not stop there. It also includes for a person who provides routine personal care and assistance with activities of daily living to persons who are in need of such care due to effects of aging, illness, injury, or other physical conditions in a private residential home. Now, the reality of this situation, this definition is important, sir. We have been increasingly seeing as people move, persons applying to have caregivers brought with them. A lot of the persons who either come across on work permit, sir, who have come across on the skilled national certification, they effectively have moved themselves and their business to Barbados. In some instances, sir, they move with their dependents, as they're entitled to do, and these dependents may include alien parents, may include children with special requirements, and we have had increasing applications for persons to bring with them the persons who are already members of their household. The Barbadian context, sir, is not one that readily leans towards that. I remember when we had an application for somebody seeking a work permit to bring their live-in assistant to Barbados. We said that you need to advertise first. You need to advertise first. And the person did the ads, and we required the person, the immigration department required the person to bring the ads in and to show proof of the ads and the interviews. So when they put out the ads, they got a series of applications from outside of Barbados. Not one single applicant, not even that you had somebody who applied but didn't qualify. Nobody applied for the post of living domestic in response to the applications. We asked them to do it a second time. They did it a second time. Nobody applied. Well, quite frankly then, sir, we had no choice. We had to allow the person to bring their living domestic with them. Sir, but it's not even just that. The category also includes, sir, and provides for a person who provides routine care and supervision for children in private residential homes. Once again, this is not necessarily a feature of the Barbadian way of life, but if we think, sir, like Jamaica. In Jamaica, it is almost commonplace for certain persons in certain economic brackets, sir, to have drivers who pick up their children and ferry them backwards and forwards and do shopping and whatnot. They also, in many instances, sir, have live-in nannies. The nannies will live in at the house during the week and go home on a weekend. That is not, sir, quite frankly, something we readily associate with Barbados. But the reality is, increasingly, the persons who are on welcome stamps, the persons who are coming to Barbados, moving to Barbados on work permits, this is a practical, factual requirement of them and their way of living. And I think we actually do need to get to the point in Barbados where people see this as a viable opportunity. It has other spin-off benefits, if you ask me, sir, but why is it that we don't even actually consider to the point of applying to be a living nanny? Why? The need exists. We can't get away from the fact that it exists. It exists. It is so commonplace in the other Caribbean territories that this is not even an issue for them. But it is a reality in Barbados, and it is no part of our legislation, sir. With respect to agricultural workers, an agricultural worker, sir, previously was a person who held a CVQ or NVQ qualification from the CXC, or a certificate from an agency of which the member state permits to issue certificates which confirms the person possesses practical experience in the field of agriculture. So CVQ, NVQ, or when there's a registering body, sir, something from then certifying that the person has practical experience in the field of agriculture. We've expanded this definition now to agricultural workers are persons engaged in agricultural work in one or more of the following areas: crop farm production, including growing, harvesting, field or tree, and gathering fruits and plants. and livestock farm production, including breeding and tending of animals, including aquaculture. So I having spoken, sir, with my good friend, the Minister for Agriculture, there is no issue at all with that qualification because that definition practically covers what agriculture is and expands it slightly past the restrictions of the CVQ or MVQ or a basic letter certifying that you are experienced in agriculture. Private security officer. The previous reference was the security guard, and it meant that a person who held a CVQ in security operations or any equivalent qualifications and is registered with an agency which a member state permits to license or register security guards. We have now changed that, or it has now been changed by heads and is being incorporated in our domestic law, sir, as to being a private security officer, which provides services for the protection of persons or property, or to prevent the theft and or destruction or the unlawful taking of property. Now, it is interesting, these definitions, sir, quite frankly, I don't think anybody can argue with the definitions. The definitions are pretty much simply a practical exercise in clearing up anomalies, gray areas, or refining definitions. In the dictionary, periodically you see Oxford put up something that a definition has been changed to include X. In employment, sir, you may have a position as X, but if that position gets expanded where the duties include duties that were previously not contemplated at the time the definition for X was actually done, then you have to expand the job definition, expand the scope of works. So this is natural and normal, and it is evolving. So we are not at this point in time increasing any categories further than what was last increased. What we are doing is making the definitions contemporary, sir, bringing them in line with what they actually should be. Now, let us look, sir, at what does the CSME regime mean to Barbados and Barbadians? What has been the update on the CSME applications? Sir, I'm not going to go through year by year. In total, since, I think, 2010, sir, there have been 3,442 persons granted indefinite stay in Barbados. All right, from inception to December 2021, sir, there were 3,442 persons. And the amount of persons who entered under the right of establishment from inception, sir, were 351. Now, the Accreditation Council does two things. It issues actual certificates from this end, so a person can go into the Accreditation Council and say, I believe that I qualify to become a CARICOM skilled national, and they can provide their qualifications, and the Accreditation Council will consider and see whether they meet the criteria, and then accord them skilled national status. And that skilled national status is skilled national status being emitted from Barbados. So the person is being certified in Barbados as a skilled national. With that certification, they can work in Barbados, or if they wish to leave Barbados and go somewhere else, they can go with the Barbadian certification to another country. Now, sir, in terms of verifications are where somebody comes to Barbados with a skilled national certification which has been issued by another territory, another country. We do not accept out of hand the qualifications that the person comes with. We do not accept out of hand that the person comes with a skilled national certificate and we just accept it at face value. What they actually do, sir, is back check it. So the Accreditation Council will request of the accrediting body certification from them directly that they did issue this certificate for this particular skill set to this particular person. And once the Accreditation Council is satisfied in Barbados that the certificate is valid and the person has been validly issued with the certificate, then they will accept the verification. So you can get the accreditation in Barbados, which you can use in Barbados or take somewhere else where it will be verified. Or you can come here with your qualification, sir, and have it verified and be permitted to work in Barbados. Now, if we, sir, consider what the vast majority of the certifications were in relation to. So from Barbados, the skill certificates in total that were issued were 3,181. So those were issued locally. And those concerned, sir, Barbadian citizens being issued skill national certification that they then took and exported their labor. In many instances, sir, this would involve professionals and degree holders, so graduates. Graduates, sir, make up the vast majority of persons who are applying for skill national certification in Barbados. Of the 3,181, sir, the graduates accounted for 1,890. So the graduate class outstripped any other class by about 4 to 1. So the bulk of persons who have actually benefited from the free movement, sir, have actually been graduates. We know, sir, that many lawyers from Barbados go and practice in other islands, and other lawyers come here to do cases. Sir, if I happen to have the leader of the opposition as my lawyer in Barbados, and I find myself in Jamaica embroiled in litigation, then I want the lawyer that I'm comfortable with to come to Jamaica and deal with my case. And under this, you are free to move with your professional assistance and your professional help. We know there are many dentists, sir, doctors and dentists who play their trade in Barbados and they go and do stints. I think you call it a locum. Go and do locums in other countries. We have persons with certain qualifications, sir, who come to Barbados for stints. So they will come in for 6 weeks and conduct all of their business in that 6 weeks, and then they roll back out again. But they have a special skill set that may or may not be available here. Sir, one of the most famous, I don't want to call the name of the particular doctor or his specialty, but that particular doctor is well known throughout the Caribbean, sir, for enhancements. And he plays his trade in Barbados, and he just as equally picks up and plays his trade in other countries, sir, where he lands to a long waiting line of persons waiting to avail themselves of his particular skill set. And he does, he's not a psychiatrist, no. And he does his business, and he comes back to Barbados. It is important to note, sir, that by far the vast majority of persons who have availed themselves of this opportunity and this regime have actually been, sir, graduates. Sir, media persons account for a few. Sports persons, sir, are perhaps the next biggest ones, sir. But the ones, with the exception, sir, of holders of associate degrees or comparable degrees, the next biggest class of persons is artists. We all know. We pick up, sir, and leave Barbados. Not we. I didn't get a chance to go. But some people, sir, picked up and left Barbados and went to enjoy Carnival that just finished in Trinidad. And they left Barbados and went to Carnival and went to the fests that the Bajan artists were playing at. Artists freely move in and among the Caribbean. All of the shows we have in Barbados, sir, the Hennessy Artistry, the Reggae Festival, the Raise, all of the shows, bringing artists who travel seamlessly in between the countries. Come in, they perform, and they leave, sir. Come crop over, you ain't saying nothing. If you're holding a party, sir, you are not saying a pang. I don't know if Hansard can actually get out. That would be P-A-N-G, sir, in inverted commas. But you are not saying anything if you don't have some foreign artists on your slate. We have and celebrate our local Bajan talent, but our local Bajan talent gets big recognition in Barbados, but sometimes even bigger recognition when they travel. So it has worked. It has worked for those who position themselves, sir, to avail themselves of the opportunities presented by the Skill National regime. We know that some of our nurses travel. Some of our police officers, sir, leave Barbados and go. We are lucky in Barbados because we have a highly educated and highly skilled workforce. Perhaps we have one of the best educated workforces in the entire Caribbean. What does that do? That allows Barbadians who might hit a ceiling in Barbados. You might be, let's say, a supervisor at the company you work for, and you can't get past supervisor. But your skill set is one that they may not have in another one of our sister islands. So you are stuck at a point here in Barbados, but you can pick up and go to somewhere else where that skill set is being developed. And you go from being a supervisor to a manager or an instructor. So the possibilities are there for us to move along. Sir, it's perhaps best, because I seem to be drifting into it. It's perhaps best for me to answer the question, what is in it for Bajans? What is in it for Barbadians? We had the bland description where I explained what the definition was before and what it is now. So I think everybody understands that the definition is just for clearing up. And sorry, sir. I think everybody understands that the definition, sir, was for the purpose of properly defining and making contemporary what the definition was. There's no mystery or no malice in there. If we look at the broader picture of what is the skilled national regime and what does it do, it allows Barbadians to benefit from a wider pond than the pond we are currently fishing in. If we look at Barbadians, sir, who start up a business with, let's say, 300,000 people. It's an easy number to use. Let's say 300,000 people. If you have 300,000 people, sir, and you are selling a product that is good and has longevity, the most you will ever get in Barbados is 300,000 sales. You are capped by the amount of persons who are here. There is a market so well beyond Barbados that a lot of persons don't necessarily contemplate when working on their business plan. If I go back, sir, to the field of entertainment, which I'm familiar with, when we are staging a show in Barbados, or when a promoter is staging a show in Barbados at certain times of year, you're not just looking at your captive Barbadian market. You're looking at advertising that show in such a way that you bring other people in for it. You want to entice people to come in. When we used to have a jazz festival or a music festival, so I've been to music festivals throughout the Caribbean. I've been to the St. Lucia Music Festival most recently. And the St. Lucia Music Festival, sir, had a ton of St. Lucians, but half of Barbados seemed to be there too. And all of Martinique seemed to come over on the ferry. So if those who are putting it on catered only for the local or domestic market, then you're capping the ability for your product to grow or be experienced, and you're capping the amount of money that you can make. Somebody comes up with a good idea in the United States of America, sir. You have, I don't even know how many millions of people there are in the States, but you have an expansive market that if you manage to sell to every couple of people, you can become an instant millionaire. In Barbados, to become a millionaire selling something, then you have to sell that product there because there is a limit to the amount of persons you can sell it for in Barbados. We need to stop thinking, sir, only of our markets and our experiences being Barbadian. It might interest some people to know that Barbados is one of the countries that has benefited most from the Caribbean single market and economy. I believe exports to CARICOM member states for Barbados are about in the region of $300 to $350 million per year. $300 to $350 million per year Barbados takes in from the rest of CARICOM. I believe that we exceed most of the others except perhaps Jamaica and Trinidad. A lot of Barbadian manufacturers and Barbadian business people are developing their markets and their products to have regional and international appeal. It doesn't make sense for me to sell my seasoning in Barbados alone when there's so much competition out there for seasoning in Barbados. I should be able to sell my seasoning in Trinidad. I should be able to go down to Trinidad if I want and set up my business in Trinidad as well under the rights of establishment. It allows us, sir, to fully expand. Now, sir, it needs to be said there's a difference in philosophy between the two parties that dominate the political landscape in Barbados, sir. There's a definite difference in philosophy. CARICOM had a champion in the former Prime Minister, Mr. Arthur. It had one of its most determined and fervent champions in Mr. Arthur, who believed fully in the concept of regional integration. When we ask what does it mean to us, there tends to be a fear, sir, every time we discuss CARICOM and every time we discuss the single market and economy, there seems to be a fear that persons are coming here to take our jobs. And we don't necessarily appreciate the benefits that we're actually getting from this regime. Of course, there might be some competition for jobs. But sometimes you don't miss something. You don't miss the water till the well runs dry. I remember, sir, in 2008, one of the first steps of the last government, one of the first policies of the last government was to purge Barbados of non-nationals. Purge. There was a whole-scale immigration movement to pick up and deport everybody who was not entirely right. Everybody. Everybody, sir. And it got to the point, sir, where a phrase was coined. Say, yes, we believe in CSME. Yes, you are welcome to come. But wait until we ask you. I think the phrase was, sir, ever so welcome, wait for call. I believe that's a phrase, sir, that the Honourable member for Christchurch South is probably familiar with now. Ever so welcome. But wait for the call. Sir, sometimes the call takes a while, and you have to try a couple of times before you get the call. Sometimes the call is immediate. Sometimes the call does not come at all. But, sir, the philosophy of the two parties that dominate the political landscape in Barbados could not be more polarized on this. This government, sir, is about the advancement of Barbados. This government is about taking everybody along who has something to contribute to Barbados and making Barbados stronger and better. The other government, the former government, sir, was about purging. It was about fear-mongering. It was about xenophobia. It was about purging. We just have to think, sir, coming up to the 2018 election, sir, the 2018 election, when the law was clear as to who could vote in Barbados. CARICOM nationals who had been here for 6 months or more. That was what the law said. But the last government, sir, sought to exclude from the electoral list anybody who fit that bill. If you were not a resident of Barbados, you could not vote. So somebody on a CARICOM skilled national certification whose life was in Barbados, who pays taxes in Barbados, whose children go to school in Barbados, who drive on the roads in a constituency in Barbados, who go and shop at the village shop in Barbados, that person did not have a say in. And worse than that, sir, is that the last government fought tooth and nail to exclude them. Tooth and nail. The case went right up to the day before elections. Judgment was handed down, and the adjustment was made to the electoral list on the day of the elections. That's how hard they fought it. That's how hard they did not want the recognition of our brothers and sisters from CARICOM. That is how hard that they fought for the purge and to maintain the purge. Sir, that caused Barbados untold damage and injury in its professional reputation, sir. We had in Barbados the Guyana bench at the airport, not the illegal persons bench, not the hold here and wait till we sort you out bench, sir. It was the Guyana bench. It was reserved under the last party, under the last government for Guyanese. No Guyanese, no foreigner, no Guyanese in particular was supposed to come into Barbados easily. You could not come here. We ain't want you. We don't care what you have to contribute. We don't want you. You might qualify as a CARICOM Skill National. Did you get your certification before you came here? No, we don't want you. Although there's provision for the persons to come here with the documents and get the certification in Barbados. That's who we were and that's what we are under the last government. It is interesting, sir, how the pendulum has gone full tilt. Under the last government, sir, we were taught and encouraged to deride our brothers and sisters from CARICOM. But who holding the power in CARICOM now? What is the fastest growing economy, not in the Caribbean, but in the world? In the world. The fastest growing economy in the world is Guyana. At this point in time, sir, I would take a sip of water. Well, I let that one sink. And the difference, sir, the incredible difference, when a Bajan goes down to Guyana now to play their trade or to provide their technical and professional services, right? Or to set up a business, we are met with open arms. We are met with open arms. So almost half the construction of roads and things going on in Guyana, sir, is being done by Bajan companies who are taking Bajan supervisors and Bajan managers down to Guyana to work. A lot of the technical resources that Guyana is dependent on to build out their country are coming from here. A lot of the IT specialists are coming from here. There are Bajans who can't get work here now and going to Guyana and thriving. And we are being welcomed. I almost feel shame, sir, for the period 2008 to 2018. I almost feel shame. Sir, while I associate myself with the statements I'm making, I would never associate myself with that party. That has brought too much shame on the people of Barbados. It has. I'm glad, sir, that people are sometimes more forgiving than we are. I'm glad. There's a farmer in my constituency, sir, who is perhaps he's perhaps the biggest farmer in Christchurch. He farms in the Gibbons Bogs area. And I asked him, you plan to go back? No, Guyana making all the money, you plan to go back? He said, Mr. Abrams, we weren't wanted in 2008 to 2018. But quite frankly, right now my child is a Bajan. My children go to private school. I employ Barbadians. I am a Bajan. Barbados is my home. I am a Bajan. So a lot of the persons, sir, that we feared back then helped to build Barbados into what it is now. I do not think, I think my good friend, sir, the Minister of Agriculture, is probably going to weigh in on this. And if he doesn't, I'll cover his end in the wrap up. But sir, agriculture ground to a halt in that period. And the resurgence in agriculture, and I think agriculture, so he must be commended. Agriculture is doing well. You just have to hear the battles between him, sir, and the Minister for Housing to understand that there's competition for land in Barbados. I have never seen agriculture. It has been a long time, sir, since we've seen the amount of plowing, amount of planting and the amount of reaping of products in Barbados. And this all goes towards our food security, the aim and the policy to make Barbados self-sufficient in food. But sir, but 25 by 25, sir. But sir, I digress a little bit. I had started this train of thought by saying you never miss the water till the well run dry. In my previous iteration, sir, I worked in town. Town, Fairchild Street, all the stands out there, all the stalls, all the businesses, all the shops, all the bars used to be kicking and thriving. We know that, sir. On a Friday, you avoided going by Fairchild bus stand over the bridge and turning left. You tried to stay as far from that because you couldn't get through. Out there was rammed. Sir, after the purge, Fairchild Street was a ghost town. A lot of the businesses in Fairchild Street closed down. They closed down. For a while, sir, Oistins itself, and the Honourable Member for Christchurch South would know this, or should know this, Oistins was a ghost town. You did not know how many foreign nationals propped up Oistins until we kicked them out. Not we, they. Because it wasn't me. I didn't believe in that. We could not appreciate, sir, how many foreign nationals propped up the things that we do or take for granted as a matter of course. Sir, the landlords in low-income housing, landlords in Barbados were crying out. The purge robbed them of their tenants. Bridgetown has still not recovered from the purge of 2008 and the years following, sir. It hasn't. It hasn't. They didn't want them. Them didn't want them, sir. And them tell them to leave. And we suck salt from then till now. That is the reality. We are a drop in the bucket. The future of Barbados depends, sir, on the skill sets that we have. And it also depends on evolving skill sets, some of which we don't have. It may also, sir, depend on skill sets which we had but lost. I remember, sir, when agriculture used to be generational. My father was a farmer, my grandfather was a farmer, and he taught my father. My father went to work with him, and then eventually went to work with my father. And I learned exactly how to plant X. I learned exactly how to reap it. I learned that when you start to get the fungus put it, you spray it with vinegar. But you can tell he wasn't a farmer. But that is my point. The fact is there were people who knew this without a formal education on it because it was passed on, it was generational. It hasn't happened. Barbadians are coming out of certain things. And I'm not saying that, I'm not listing categories of work. I'm not saying there's work that a Bajan should do, there's work a Bajan should not do, there's work that somebody should do. I'm not saying that. Because every single requirement at every level in Barbados, we as a government, we as a mature and responsible government have to fulfill it. We have to provide the answer for it. If, sir, there's the most technical thing that the government needs or the country needs to go forward, then we have to provide for it and make allowances for it. If it exists here, we nurture it and build it so it can run itself. If it doesn't exist, then we do what we have to do to bring it in. Sir, you remember when they had the advertisement for persons to pick cotton? Barbados has a thriving cotton industry. Sea Island cotton, I believe, is one of the most refined cottons in the world and one of the most expensive cottons. And I had a point in time, and there was a point in time, sir, when there were a shortage of persons to pick cotton. I'm not saying cotton pickers, right? Because that is the phrase that some people use to demean what it is. Anybody working for honest day's work, sir, as far as I'm concerned, is a man to be commended. I would rather a man do what he has to do and get an honest day's pay, not go and rob somebody for money he didn't earn. We could not find people in Barbados to pick our fluffy white gold. We could not find people to pick the cotton that we require, our industry required, to make that valuable product called Sea Island cotton, that world-renowned product called Sea Island cotton. We were in danger of not being able to supply the cotton to suit or to satisfy the requirements and the orders we had. And we had to then bring in people from overseas. So the reality, let's talk about agriculture. The reality is every single time a work permit comes in, every time somebody applies for a work permit in Barbados for agriculture, I send it straight to the Minister of Agriculture. I send it straight to him. Is this required? Is there a shortage of this? If he tells me no, there's no shortage, that have sufficient people do this, then I say no. If he says we have a real shortage of this, then I would approve. But quite frankly, sir, agriculture in Barbados is now being built on the backs of non-national labor. That's the reality. I would love to see more Bajans get involved in agriculture. I would love to see it. But sometimes we treat it almost as a hobby or a hustle. A man has a full-time job, and he get a little piece of land, plot of land to work. He goes to work, he comes home, or in his spare time, he tends to that, and he may get sufficient just to keep it going. But open field agriculture is a day in, day out occupation. Correct. It is a job. Correct. Day in, day out, you are in that field. You have to be there if the rain falling hard over a couple of days to pull the product out to the ground before it spoils in the ground. You have to be there, sir, to stop the sheep from going, eating your property, your product. Well, worse, sometimes you got to be there to stop people from thieving it. But it is a day in, it is not a hobby. It is not a loose arrangement. Our national security depends on our food security, on us being able to make ourselves independent or at least manageable in feeding ourselves. And that requires a sustained, comprehensive, professional approach to agriculture, which quite often, sir, we don't have. I do not believe in anybody coming in here and taking jobs that Bajans want or should have. I don't believe in it. I believe that a Bajan who wants every possible opportunity should be able to get every possible opportunity. That's what we're here for as a government. We are here to enfranchise our people first and foremost. But if I'm talking straight, sir, and the person that I'm speaking about will probably know if he's listening, somebody hounded me down to get a piece of land to farm. They wanted a piece of land to farm. They said, Mr. Abrams, I'm not asking for a job. I want a piece of land to farm. I turned around, hounded down my neighbor on my right. I hounded him down, harassed him, made him miserable. He allocated a piece of land to the person. He didn't last but 6 months. And I asked him, because I got the phone call saying, what happening? You might get banned this thing. And I asked a question, and the person said to me, Abrams, the sun too hot. I ain't able with all that hot sun. That's the reality. Will it stop me from trying with somebody else? No, it will not stop me from trying with somebody else. But I'm saying that the requirements for agriculture have to be filled. I would like to fill them from Bajans, and I take every possible step to ensure that Bajans get sorted first. But if we can't find Bajans to do it, then we find it from somewhere else. I started by talking about the persons who want living domestics or living nannies for the children. If Bajans don't want it, then let somebody else do it. Let us recognize that it exists. But it also means that we can export the things that we are good at. We can export those as well. I am sure, I would almost hang my head, my hat on it, that the Honourable Member for Christchurch South, I am sure he has practiced down the islands. A lawyer as prominent as he is, with the depths of skills that he has, with his time in legal practice, I am positive that he has done cases down the islands. Sir, I know my good friend, I know others in this chamber, sir, have actually practiced down the islands. Actually, it's almost commonplace. And what happens quite often, sir, in sensitive cases where you might not want a local prosecuting a certain thing or suing the state, you bring in somebody from overseas. And how many commissions of inquiry have legal luminaries from Barbados sat across the length and breadth of the Caribbean? They cruise in, don't ask for work permit, go and sit and hear cases and conduct inquiries. And to great benefit from them. Barbadians have benefited well from CARICOM. The opportunity exists for more Bajans to benefit from CARICOM. I don't want it to just be the honourable member for Christchurch South or myself. I don't want it to just be persons who are graduates or who earn at a particular level. No. That opportunity must exist for every Barbadian. If you satisfy that revised treaty of Chaguaramas, if you qualify as a skilled national, if you have a skill that can be exported, we owe it to our people to help them to export that skill, help them to export that service, help them to appreciate there's a bigger market on which to build their wealth. The concept of the CARICOM Skilled National is an honourable one. The concept of the single market and economy is an honourable one. We're not there yet. It is going to go through more and more refinement. And sir, at some point in time, a Bajan is going to come forward and say, look, I do this. This is a new field. I do this. I am one of the best in the world at it. Right? This should be added to the category. This is an emerging skill set. AI? What, sir? In short order, persons who are conversant in AI or who have specialties in AI are probably going to get added to that list. We need to monitor and make it relevant. We need to add on these skill sets that don't just serve Barbados, but serve the rest of CARICOM. We need to not be afraid to embrace new skill sets that we hadn't contemplated before. We need to not be afraid to travel and try our hands somewhere else. Sometimes you just need a change of pace and you just need a change of place. I know a person recently, sir, who was becoming unlucky where they were in CARICOM. They were having some domestic issues. And that person was able to take a deep breath and pick themselves up and walk away from it all. They're handling their matrimonial issues from here. They're doing the divorce from here. When necessary, they go back to where they came from to attend the court. But they have come here, sir, and picked up and started to work in Barbados and provided a valuable service. I can't go any more specific than that because someone may figure out who it is. Right? But imagine the luxury of being a CARICOM citizen. Our passports. Now, if you look at the passport, if you had a recent passport, sir, you realize it doesn't just say Barbados anymore. It says Caribbean Community on it. It's a CARICOM passport. We are now citizens and residents effectively of CARICOM with marketable mobile skills. And if we want to solve our issues, sir, then we create other avenues in Barbados. We create areas and arenas. We create, sir, I'm searching for the word now. I don't often search for words. We create new areas of business, and then we populate them with our own. I think, sir, what the government should be doing is facilitating persons to be able to set up businesses in other Caribbean territories. I know that we have done it in some respects, but I think this is something we probably need to look at a little bit more. For those enterprising Bajans that we believe have capacity outside of Barbados, have capacity to be global, let them start by reaching into the Caribbean. Let them do it with the backing of the government. Let them set up a hub. If you want to try a different piece of kind of agriculture that is land intensive, when we don't really have that much land here, then Guyana has made land available in Guyana for Bajans to go and farm. I think Suriname has done the same thing. So further apart from people locking their borders to us, persons are trying to invite Barbadians in, invite Bajans to cross the water and bring their skills, bring their experiences. Come and make your money here. Pay some taxes here, but come and make your money here. Do it on a bigger scale. Sir, I don't want to overspeak on this. I just want, in closing, to pay some respect, sir, to our NTA and our TVET programs, which allow our citizens to train up. We're trying to train people up, giving them marketable, sir, and exportable skills. We're trying to take persons who will normally be entry-level, in entry-level positions and trying to skill them up so that the position they go for is not necessarily entry-level, right? And I think that's a commendable effort on the part of the Ministry of Education. It is something that is bearing fruit. It's something that is getting a lot of buy-in at the grassroots level in communities. You're seeing persons doing the NTA skills online. You're seeing persons trying to get their technical and vocational qualifications, sir. A lot has been done by this government in trying to upskill our people, to position them to take advantage of opportunities, sir, that arise not just in Barbados, but outside of Barbados. Sir, this is an exciting time for us. Globally, the reach of CARICOM is expanding. We are now a major player on the global scale. Our voice is being heard on the global scale, in the global arena. Our opinions are being sought in the global space. This is an exciting time for us because whereas, sir, we were a voice crying in a wilderness of 300,000 people, we are now a voice saying to the whole world, we are ready for business. We're ready to provide for you skills that you never contemplated. We're ready to do our part. Sir, I think the best thing we could do, rather than the example set in 2008 to 2018, rather than fight it, let us embrace it. Let us benefit it from it, sir, and let us profit from it. With those few words, sir, I wish to beg that this be read a second time.
Honourable for Christchurch South.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I trust that I would have heard incorrectly if I heard the Honourable Member for Christchurch East say a few minutes ago that he locates regionalist philosophies in the work that was begun some 25 years ago. For his sake, I really do hope that I heard him incorrectly. And if he says, if his silence now says that I heard him correctly, I want to take him back beyond CSM, beyond CSME, and to take him to a point in the history of this region where there was an entity called CARIFTA. And he likes his parties, and he would want to know that CARIFESTA, which grew out of CARIFTA, was held in 1972 in Guyana. And the architects behind the movement of CARIFTA were those four famous Caribbean leaders. And I mean no disrespect in calling their surnames. I do it with reverence even. Burnham, Barrow, Williams, Manley. So that the work done within the last 25 years merely built on the work of those early persons. But one does not wish to locate all of the work with those four Caribbean patriots. I don't think there's anyone in this chamber who is capable of forgetting 1958 to 1962. Historians refer to it as the experiment. And an experiment would imply that you're trying something. And it is one of the great tragedies of Caribbean life that The leaders at the time did not commit themselves to more than an experiment, but that they ought to have committed themselves to a mission to unite this region. But I take the regionalist movement even earlier than that 58 to 62 failed experiment. And please do not be alarmed if I say to you that regionalism may have had its birth as well in regional cricket. There was something called the interterritorial matches, and cricket, and the rivalries were very fierce. And Barbadians and Trinidadians, that was the zone of greatest rivalry, sir. Those interterritorial matches between Barbados and Trinidad. And when you have peoples of different nationalities meeting in one place, that in itself is evidence of regionalism. So, Honourable Member for Christchurch East, I invite you to take your mind beyond recent times. I know we live in recent times and we're so excited and we tend to imprison ourselves in recent events. But nothing that happens today started with us. There's always someone called a pioneer. It must have begun somewhere. So that, Your Honor, I just wanted to clarify that for the sake of the Honourable Member for Christchurch East. What he has brought here today will not be a matter of any contest. I think all persons in Barbados, with a few exceptions, have tended to be committed to regionalism. Indeed, let me take this chamber to the well-known Jamaican intellectual, well-versed in political economy, George Beckford, Professor George Beckford, who uttered the famous statement, "We in the Caribbean are already integrated. It is only the governments who don't know it." And that has stood as a very damning statement against officialdom insofar as regionalism is concerned. What Professor Beckford was saying to us is that regionalism is not formal. It is not an exclusively formal institution. That Labour has established regionalism as a phenomenon which has characterized peoples across these islands for many, many years. The Honourable Member referred to my representation of Oistins, and in so doing, that draws me to the fishing industry. Fishing has been going on in this region, in this country, in these countries, these seas, for many, many years. And when a man sets out on a Moses small boat with 3 persons and sails as far as Tobago and Trinidad, he is as much a regionalist as any politician who sits in a conference room. Beyond the fishermen, there have been the merchants of agricultural produce, you and I, sir, who have the advantage of a few more years than some of us in here. Remember walking through Bridgetown and seeing mangoes being sold, literally sold, at wharfside. Very informal exercise, very informal activity, very informal industry, where merchants of agricultural produce, mangoes, were coming up from St. Lucia, sailing to Barbados on that, what is now a more pristine and sanitized environment. I think it's now a marina, but before it was a marina, it was a place where merchants and laborers exchanged, they bartered, and our people bought mangoes and paid them cash, I believe, in many cases. And they sailed back to St. Lucia. And those mangoes found their way not onto supermarket shelves, but onto Tudor Street, and Roebuck Street, and James Street, and even the alleys of Bridgetown. And that was regionalism at work. So that regionalism, I say to this chamber, did not find its birthplace at conference tables. It did not find its birthplace in formal settings. Now, we obviously support the initiative that's taken today. Except that one remains curious as to why there's this incremental addition to the categories of labor whenever we come to amend. It is rather curious. I heard that we began with graduates and musicians, and today we reach the point of, I think, security guards and maids. Now, the public will remain curious as to why there seems to be this hierarchy of labor. We start with graduates, we go to musicians, and then so many years later, we find it possible only at this time to include security guards and domestic help around the house. That would, I think, reflect a hierarchy of labor which becomes an expression which speaks to a social value connected to that labor. Social prestige. Why do we reach security guards and labor and domestics so many years after? We don't know. And I was hoping that the honorable member would give the public some explanation as to why there's this incremental approach, and why is that incremental approach reflecting a social hierarchy, and why is that social hierarchy reflecting itself in an expression of social values that you attach to labor. So that the domestic wants to know why the door is open to her so late. The security guard will wish to know, why is the door open to him so late? I will pause, Your Honor, and indicate to this chamber and indicate to the honorable member that the presence or the entrance of a security guard may cause some little alarm, some little disquiet. We know what security guards do. And this is not to criticize the initiative. If we are not getting people to apply to do security work in this country, it would probably justify the opening of the door to security guards. But just a caution that a security guard with his training, a security guard is essentially a military person. He may not be carrying an AK-47 or an M16, but presumably he has some kind of training, some kind of military training. And in an environment where crime is problematic, and beyond problematic, it is sometimes catastrophic. One may have to, Your Honor, Minister, through Your Honor, scrutinize your security guard with some closeness. He comes as a military person. And if he is a military person, maybe he comes with military skills. Maybe he comes with military training. And I don't want to alarm this country, but the country needs to know that sometimes crime is also regionalist. That we have had reports, certainly in Barbados, of individuals traveling into this country, committing crime, and spending so much time as they need to commit that crime, most violent crime. I hope I'm not alarming Barbados, but I'm told that this is something that maybe, I will use reserve language on this, that may be happening within this region, that you now have men who are mercenaries, gunmen for hire. And if a man is coming as a security guard, the immigration department may need to scrutinize that person with some greater care. But it is not a statement against security guards. It is a statement that this country should take some precaution insofar as the entrance of security personnel are concerned. Now, Your Honor, the movement of labor, as I've said, has occurred for many years, perhaps more than 100, perhaps more than 200 years. I've referred to the phenomenon of fishing. But labor has moved with some difficulty. Whenever we speak of labor, we must speak of capital. And we must expose that labor-capital dichotomy. You don't have labor unless you have capital. You don't have capital unless you have labor. And labor has endured much difficulty in traversing this region. And that's why this legislation is important. That's why this legislation is supported. And we know that capital has always moved easily. Capital has inherent power. A large company wants to travel to Jamaica. A Jamaican company wants to travel to Barbados, and this has happened. We know of the presence now of powerful Trinidadian companies into Barbados, so that capital has never existed regionally with the constraints that have confronted labor. And it is on that basis, it is for that reason, Your Honor, that one naturally supports legislation that regulates the free movement of labor across the Caribbean. Labor is vulnerable. A man comes here from St. Lucia, St. Vincent. We all grew up in the Barbadian villages, and every village had a Vincentian, a St. Lucian. And we used to call him the foreigner in the village. And I can tell you, Your Honor, he lived harmoniously in that village. And the only thing that distinguished him from the locals in that village was his accent. And therefore, people call him the foreigner man. And of course, he would meet a lady, and I don't know why the Honourable Member for St. Thomas is so amused by this. But he would establish himself more permanently when he met a lady, and you would see some young children emerge from that union. So he put his flag down in a very real way. But the vulnerability of that foreigner man in the village did not exist among the villagers. Sometimes you would hear disparaging comments, but they live harmoniously. So that the point being made, again, Your Honor, is that there has always been free movement across this Caribbean region. That movement of labor has found hospitality in the countries to which it has gone. If it did not find hospitality, they would have gone right back, but they stayed here. We've had Vincentians and St. Lucians in this country who have lived here 25, 30 years without registration in the immigration department. And that has been the success of the regionalist movement, that the people, the ordinary people, have embraced it, whereas the governments have tended not to. And that is something that needs to be visited, and on that basis, again, Your Honor, I say that I support, on this side, the legislation that comes before the House today. We've spoken of those things, those phenomena that have been hostile to regionalism. And one must understand that what divides the Caribbean, or the thing that has divided the Caribbean, or the things that have divided the Caribbean. The Caribbean, as we know it now, today, was divided first by conquest. The Dutch came, the French came, the Spanish came, the English came, and we know this is rudimentary history. They did not come as friends. They came as rivals, and they implanted their political empires within this region. And therefore, these little dots found themselves divided by a colonial presence, divided by the colonizer. And the manifestation of that division of these islands was in language. And therefore, a Barbadian had little contact. Guadeloupe did not exist in the consciousness of a Barbadian. Martinique did not exist in the consciousness of a Barbadian. Haiti did not exist in the consciousness of a Barbadian, so that most Barbadians would not have known of the successful revolution of the Haitians against the French. And so we were divided from each other by conquest, and then language became that great divider of people in this region. And when I speak of language, one must add culture, because it is quite possible that a young Martinican has no idea what is cricket. And we in the Caribbean like to speak of cricket as our regional game. For the Martinican, it is not. Are they therefore irrelevant? To the Haitian, cricket doesn't exist. To the Jamaican, it does. To the Dominican, it does. It defines the Barbadian. It defines the St. Lucian. And so, the point I'm making here is that there's still some very high barriers against the regionalist effort, against integration. The experience of colonialism, the existence of language, French, Spanish, Dutch, English. We don't know what each other is saying. And if you don't know what the other man is saying, that is a divider between you and that man. For all intents and purposes, you're two aliens standing in front of each other. And that militates against the integration effort. Now, the Honourable Member for St. Michael South, I think in his first term of government, he used to have a ministry called the Blue Economy. And he came to Oistins, and his permanent secretary at the time gave me an education in what was the Blue Economy. And it occurs to me that we like to say that the sea divides us. And having learned about the Blue Economy, having learned about the sea as a source of great wealth, we must take a new look at what is the sea. The sea doesn't divide us. If we have something called a blue economy contained within our marine environment, the sea unites us. And the law has long recognized this, because the law permits every nation to claim territory 3 miles beyond the physical coastline. And the international law has always recognized this. And I think, Honourable Member, that thing we call an economic zone, that still exists 200 miles off the physical coastline. Thank you. So that the economists and the lawyers have recognized, and the scientists have recognized, that the sea is a great resource of wealth, and therefore we must encourage our young people to consider our marine environment not as a place of which we must be afraid, but an environment that we must exploit for economic benefit and economic advantage. And so, Your Honor, those are I've spoken of the things that divide us. No speech on regionalism, no speech on integration is completed unless we refer to those formal institutions that have united the Caribbean. And indeed, when you speak of those formal institutions, we get the more prestigious vocations traveling with those formal institutions, the academy, the University of the West Indies. We all know about this. This is something, this is really, for the Barbadian, I would say, under 75. We all have a love affair with those three letters, UWI. We know what the UWI has done for this region. And we know how the UWI has united people in this region. So that when the Honourable Member for Christchurch East reminds that we go across the Caribbean to do cases in other islands, in other courts, it is so reassuring when you arrive at that courtroom to see a student with whom you sat some 30, 40 years ago, to see him in the courtroom, and the bonding takes place. And so it is important that we continue to have our institutions made regional. Just let me pause, Your Honor, and say that I still do consider it a matter of some considerable regret that the old and former system of locating medicine in Jamaica, engineering in Trinidad, and law in Barbados, I still do regret that that has been dismantled because it has hurt regionalism. All of the doctors across the Caribbean knew each other because they all studied at Mona. All the engineers knew each other because they studied at St. Augustine, and all of the lawyers in the Caribbean in those early days studied here at Cape Hill, so that when they traveled to the other islands, immediate recognition, immediate bonding. Regionalism, the success of regionalism would have been contained within that arrangement of the existence of the UWI, I beg your pardon. The other formal institution, please do not be surprised by this, cricket. I list cricket as among the formal institutions of Caribbean integration. Cricket has now become so important to us. Beg your pardon, sir. That it is no longer the Trinidad-Barbados interterritorial game. Cricket has now become an industry at a very sophisticated level, except that they have these franchises now, T20 all over the place, but the Caribbean person still identifies the formal structure of CWI managing and administering Test cricket and ODI cricket. In spite of the franchises, that is still regarded as the established institution of Caribbean cricket. And it is, Your Honor, I know you've had this experience as I have had. We would go in those days to Shell Shield and Red Stripe cricket and feel great local pride. You wanted Barbados to beat Jamaica. And you could never imagine that 2 weeks later when a test match is playing with Jamaicans and Trinidadians in the same team, that you felt that fierce regional nationalist pride. And I say that is why Caribbean cricket continues to be a formal institution that promotes the integrationist effort across this region. Now, I have referred to the informal institution, which is manual labor. The fishermen, the merchants, that is informal. They didn't go and have a conference somewhere and agree or decide to go across the Caribbean. They just went. Economic necessity, perhaps, a spirit of adventure, so that the informal institution of integration would have been labor. The formal institution would have been the more prestigious UWI and cricket. Now, I want to place, and I noticed the minister would have referred to music as one of the early areas of free movement. Somewhere between the informal and the formal is music. There's a sense in which it is formal because it has structure, the making of records, the marketing of records, the marketing of the music. So there is some formality there, but nobody can stop a man in St. Vincent from turning his radio on and hearing a Barbadian calypsonian. That's informal, but it is something that feeds and promotes and encourages regionalism. So I put music, Your Honor, as falling within both categories of the formal and the informal institution. I expect the Honourable Member for Christchurch East did not say it, but I expect that this has socio-economic implications. That if you're inviting labor, you're really growing your economy. And the growth, I will say this, that the growth in an economy or economic growth is not to be measured in dollar signs exclusively, because inflation can give a false impression as to real economic growth. I will say that elsewhere in the fullness of time. But the presence of labor, people spending money, people making money, people gaining salaries, spending that money, and hopefully being caught within what they call the tax net, paying NIS, for example, so that the movement of labor really must be considered good for economic growth. And the minister did not say it, but I suspect that that would be one of the benefits of more or less importing labor into a country. So again, what reasonable politician would find himself objecting to legislation of this nature? I asked a question in the presence of the Honourable Member for St. George North. Where's the labor movement in all this? Because, and I asked this seriously, where's the labor movement in all this? Now, you quite often hear Barbadians complain, oh, this person is coming in and taking my job. And I believe that the labor movement here must be obligated to defend the local worker, except that you're having a local worker, I beg your pardon, a worker of equal status, of similar status in the other country, and he wants work as well. And this question is asked seriously, not by way of charging at you with criticism, but by way of a challenge. How is the labor movement across the Caribbean relating to the issue of this free movement of labor, when in some cases it presents a threat to local labor, and you therefore find yourself having to satisfy your local member? How is the labor movement relating to this? And that question is asked not to offer any solution, but seriously, if we are committed to workers' rights and if we are committed to unions in Barbados, because democracy in this country would not have existed without the success of the labor movement. And Honourable Member, I know that you know that, and we agreed on that. And so, labor must now ask itself some serious questions in relation to this issue of free movement of labor and free movement of labor at the less prestigious levels. Now, I know there's this thing called the ILO and so on. Honourable Member, I want to challenge the labor movement in this country. I don't know if the Labor College is still existing, but I would want, beg your pardon? Alive and well. Excellent, excellent, because I had heard that for some time it had been closed. And I rejoice with you if it has reopened. Yes, yes, yes. Thank you very much. Never closed. Oh, it was never closed. I was woefully misinformed, but I was hearing that there was a hiatus in its activity. And woefully misinformed. I was hearing that I was hearing that what we knew as the Labour College.
Honourable, we speak to the chair. And don't
Yes, please speak through the chair.
Speak to the chair.
Yes, I beg your pardon, sir. We both beg your pardon. I was hearing that you were doing more karaoke and weddings and less teaching. So I'm glad that the honourable member has taken the Labour movement back to academic endeavor. And I would hope that this is extended across the Caribbean, that in the same manner in which UWI has brought people together, that the Labour College would bring people together. If it is happening already, I congratulate the Labour movement in this country. If it is not happening, I would encourage that this Labour College should open itself to a Caribbean entrance and Caribbean involvement. I know that the honourable member is well situated to have cooperation with government. I expect that every time Labour legislation comes to this place, that the honourable member for St. George North would take advantage of her membership of this body and ensure that the interests of Labour are always protected when legislation comes to this place. So that, Your Honour, those are my submissions. That is my contribution to this legislation today, to state to you, Your Honour, that there is general support for legislation like this, to ask the question as to what rationale is there for the incremental addition of new categories of labor, to explain to the public whether labor that is less prestigious and of less social value, whether that is added last because of its nature, they ought not to be treated differently from other more prestigious categories of labor, to urge the government to embark or re-embark on a path of regionalist enterprise, to recognize the history of this region, to recognize the history of this country, to recognize those factors that have divided us, and to press on with a view. And I hope they don't think that it is too ambitious, but to hope that one day we will be able to say the United States of the Caribbean, and that Barbados will be the parish in this part of the Caribbean, because the United States is not strong because it is called the United States. The United States is strong because it is united. And our differences, I know this sounds like a cliche, but culturally, a New Yorker and a Texan are so far different from each other, yet they call themselves Americans, and they say USA, but there's almost nothing that unites a Texan and a New Yorker, except that they call themselves citizens of the United States of America. I wonder if that is not a lesson to us. I wonder if we don't find too many easy reasons to divide ourselves. I wonder if we don't value our own language so highly that if a man is speaking English with a different accent, we see that as a reason not to do business with him, or not to fraternize, not to enter into cultural engagement with him. We think that if a man is speaking a different language, not now speaking English with a different accent, but speaking a different language, I wonder if we don't need at this stage to break down these barriers, the historical barrier, the language barrier, the cultural barrier, break these barriers down. There's so much that is capable of happening in this Caribbean. The Honourable Member for Christchurch East made reference to trade in the Caribbean, and I think it was a former Prime Minister who reminded us in Barbados that most of our foreign trade is done within the Caribbean. And we sit down here and think that it is England and America. But we do, according to those statistics, as a category, as a separate category, the most of our foreign trade within the Caribbean. I know people will rush to Guyana, the Guyana phenomenon. I call it the Guyana phenomenon at this point in time. I heard the Honourable Member speak of Suriname as well. I think we need to be frank with Barbadians and say to them that the Suriname experiment has its constraints. To ask a man to go to Suriname to grow agricultural produce and get it back to Barbados is not economically feasible. There's the question of cost. Is it worth it to go to Suriname, plant vegetables or whatever he's planting? Is it feasible to go into Guyana, take a few black belly sheep, and do what with them? So that our trade needs to be more serious. Our expeditions in trade need to be more serious, and they need to begin at levels that certainly are protected by the state. And these little, I call them little adventures which sound good on the face of it. But Mr. Speaker, really, I am not optimistic that the Suriname experiment is an experiment that will succeed. I am not optimistic, and I'm sorry to say this, because the person who is in charge of the initiative, I know him personally, but I reserve the right to be honest. And I always speak honestly, and I believe that the time is coming when Barbadians will wish to know what happened to the Black Belly Sheep project in Guyana. Most of us Barbadians like to drive through the countryside and see that we still have our black belly sheep here. We have not run out of space. It seems that we've run out of sheep. And we've sent the sheep to Guyana, so I don't know how many we have here now. But the Barbadian landscape, the Barbadian cultural landscape has been made deficient for the absence of our black belly sheep, gentle animals. They don't bite anybody. So I don't know why we took them up and sent them to Guyana. And so, Your Honor, that is my contribution to this debate, to indicate support for this legislation. Today's is just an amendment, but that we support the legislation in principle. And I don't think we're going to stop supporting it, but as I've said, Your Honor, the ultimate goal must go beyond movement of labor, and the ultimate goal must be that of total Caribbean integration, that CSM must genuinely become CSME. The Caribbean single market must genuinely become the Caribbean single market and the economy. And after that happens, perhaps one day, when you and I are in other places, they will have a Caribbean parliament. Because perhaps you need to fix the economy before you fix the political institutions. So with those words, Your Honor, I am obliged to you.
Honourable Member for St. James Central.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Speaker, sir, I don't want to miss the opportunity to thank the honourable member who just took his seat for his support of this piece of legislation. I think, sir, that the House collectively has come to understand that despite the superficiality of the presentation, there is a sense of goodwill with respect to that which has been proffered by the government. And, Mr. Speaker, sir, we perhaps should treat to this exercise as an opportunity, in the absence of contest, as an opportunity to shed light on a number of matters where I suspect there is darkness. Now, Mr. Speaker, sir, if there's one thing that you can take away from that which the Leader of the Opposition has said, is that, quite frankly, it is true. There is a long and perhaps a rich history in this region of efforts of an integrative nature. And the honourable member took us back to the Federation, came through Carifta, etc., etc. And, Mr. Speaker, sir, we stand at this point on the shoulders of giants. And as we stand on the shoulders of giants, it is important for us to look across the Caribbean Sea, sir, with a view to understanding how we come to this point where we are treating to amendment of legislation which really it constitutes the body and spirit of the Caribbean single market and economy. That, sir, is the fundamental economic and regional, it is the fundamental regional social economic construct that brings us here today. Now, Mr. Speaker, sir, the revised Treaty of Chaguaramas, which is the legal document that all the parliaments of the region have legislated, rests on four major pillars. The first pillar, Mr. Speaker, sir, is that of economic integration. The second pillar is of foreign policy coordination. The third pillar is human and social development, primarily through functional cooperation. And the fourth pillar, sir, is security. We are here today to discuss pillar 1, which is economic integration, and pillar 3, which is human and social development. The honourable member did strike a glancing blow every now and then with respect to the substance of this legislation. And one of the glancing blows that he struck, sir, turned on that which is properly called functional cooperation. When he meandered into the purpose of the University of the West Indies, for example, that is a classic example of functional cooperation. The region, sir, through the process of functional cooperation, enshrined as it is in this document, the revised Treaty of Chaguaramas, sir, that enshrining of the process in this document allows us to do precisely what the Honourable Leader of the Opposition asks of us to be able to do across the region, which is to break down barriers. We break down the barriers, sir, by making sure that there is an access to university education. We break down the barriers by ensuring that we can have good quality of healthcare and specialization of different areas and categories of healthcare in different parts of the region. Because obviously, sir, small economies like ours are not in a position, each want to specialize in cancer research and treatment, each want to specialize in cardiac research and treatment, each want to specialize in different types of medical interventions, sir. Our economies will never, none of us, sir, will be able to do that. Well, Mr. Speaker, sir, the area, as I said, that really must attract our attention is that of the economic integration effort. And, sir, it would have been in 2019, I believe in April, that a special meeting of technical officials from all the countries of the region was put together with a view to reviewing this revised Treaty of Chaguaramas that I just spoke about, sir. And the reason why the region's technical officials were mandated to have a look is because of the fact, sir, that life and purpose had again been given to the Prime Ministerial Subcommittee on CARICOM. And I begin on that point, Mr. Speaker, because it is important for us to understand that during the period of time between 2008 and 2018, there had been a lapse in the activity of the Prime Ministerial Subcommittee in CARICOM. In fact, Mr. Speaker, sir, what we have to remember is that there is a quasi-cabinet in this region. A quasi-cabinet is just a way of saying it's a form of cabinet governance. And in that form of cabinet governance, Mr. Speaker, sir, every regional prime minister is given a responsibility. So that, for example, the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, whosoever he or she may be, will carry the responsibility of energy and matters pertaining to security. The Prime Minister of Barbados, sir, carries the responsibility of being a lead head with responsibility to integration of the single market and economy. Mr. Speaker, sir, the Prime Minister of Jamaica, whosoever he or she may be, has the responsibility for external trade negotiations. And on it goes. Every head, sir, has a responsibility. But the records reflect, sir, that the head with responsibility for the single market and economy did not convene meetings of the CARICOM single market, the subcommittee, the Prime Ministerial Subcommittee, for a period of about 7 years. So that, sir, in the period of 7 years, we had the meetings. That is the head who is now, once again, reunited with the leader of the opposition. And I don't make that point, sir, to be political, but I make that point, sir, to point out to this House that in 2019, Barbados was back. And Barbados, sir, led, unapologetically so, the charge in this region for us to get on with the business of the unification of the region. So when I hear the Honourable Leader say that there's a question that needs to be answered about the pace at which we are going, he is right. The question must be answered. But it is also true to say that the answer might not be the most, the taste of it may not be something that the Honourable Member is not palatable, is not the most palatable thing for the Honourable Member. But the fact of the matter is, Mr. Speaker, sir, that is where we are. Now, as I said, in April of 2019, that special meeting convened had as its mandate to relook the revised treaty and to understand the extent to which we are either reaching our expectations and ambitions or we are failing to get there. Now, Mr. Speaker, sir, Article 45 of the treaty. At Article 45 of the treaty, the ambition...
Remember the document of the House?
Yes, the revised treaty is the document of the House. Indeed, sir, I'm indebted to the gentleman at the clerks at the table, sir, for sharing it with me. The member states of CARICOM commit themselves to the goal of free movement of their nationals within the community. Article 45 says that. I just read it word for word. And Mr. Speaker, sir, that is the broad ambition. But the Honourable Member is right when he points out that we began on this journey, and the member for Christchurch East who piloted this bill pointed us actually to Article 46, which indicates that, and I will read, sir, as a first step towards achieving the goals set out in Article 45, to accord the following categories of community nationals the right to seek employment in their jurisdictions. And then we came to the university graduates, the media workers, the sports persons, artists, and musicians. So that as a first step towards the broad goal of having full freedom of movement, we began, sir, with those limited categories. Now, sir, I think it is important for us not to shy away from fact. I want to associate myself with the very tepid implication that was made by the Honourable Member for Christchurch South. The fact of the matter is, sir, if we're going to be true to ourselves and true to the people that sent us here, we have to recognize, sir, that there is an element of elitism in the approach. And the element of elitism perhaps was not intended because, as you see at Article 46 of the treaty, sir, they say as a first step. So that the heads back in 2001 in July, when they met in Shagarama, sir, the heads felt that this was their opportunity to begin a journey. And obviously, like any pilot project, you're going to begin in a slow and manageable way. Our challenge is, sir, that by 2019, and what makes it worse, sir, by 2023-24, we are at a point, sir, where the categories of our people who have been entitled to move still remain too constrained, still remain too limited. And the question, therefore, sir, must be, how do we justify a failure to go further, faster, and better? Now, for us in Barbados, we can point, correctly so, to the ineffectiveness of leadership of this country, which had a regional responsibility. But the region cannot be satisfied with that. And, sir, quite frankly, neither can we be satisfied with that. Because in our heart of hearts, each one of us must ask the question of ourselves, what about the millions of other people of the CARICOM region who are not empowered to move? And why is it that those who are the most poor, why is it that those who are perhaps the most vulnerable, those who are low-income earners, are not being empowered at a further and faster rate? Now, Mr. Speaker, sir, it is a difficult question, but it has to be asked. I want to say that to understand one of the reasons why we've gone so slowly is also to understand the fact that countries, small islands like ours, have limited capacity. And because of limited capacity, sir, your domestic circumstances may not be such that you can have the rate of housing required to accommodate those people who are moving. Your domestic circumstances may not be such that you have sufficiency of schools to accommodate those people who are not moving. There may well be the domestic circumstances of xenophobia. We have felt it here in past experiences, where your domestic community feels a sense of willingness and inclination to push back against those people who are coming into the country from overseas. But, Mr. Speaker, sir, one of the things that countries are allowed to do, and the honourable member asked this, and I want to answer him because I want to enlighten wherever I can. Countries are allowed, I think the question was asked with respect to labour in Barbados and the role of the Barbados Workers' Union. That is not, I believe, to put the Workers' Union in an attempt to put the Workers' Union in an uncomfortable position. I want to treat it as a legitimate request for information. The truth is that if we felt that there was a difficulty because of our local circumstance with regard to labour, we could enter a derogation and seek a carve-out to exempt and exclude Barbados because of whatever reason we justify or we're attributing to our labour situation. Antigua has done that, sir, several times in several different areas. Now, Mr. Speaker, sir, we take a posture in Barbados, and I'm going to come to this later, that it is useful for us to understand clearly two sides of this coin that we call trade. One is an offensive posture, and I say offense because that's what you're doing. You're playing offense. You're trying to get into other people's market, and you're trying to create circumstances and an environment where Barbadian men and Barbadian women are able and empowered to move into this region in its widest sense in order to earn a living. So if I hear the honourable member correctly, and he says it is limited, I certainly was one who benefited, sir. I think I have represented every country in the Eastern Caribbean as a trade consultant. I think I've represented all. But the fact of the matter is, Mr. Speaker, sir, that should be able to be said of everybody in this region, sir, who is involved in other types of activity. So that the babysitter, The lady, sir, in Hoyt's Village, who makes her living by babysitting. If she joins with a friend of hers from in the constituency of St. Michael's South, who she went to school with, and joins with another friend who in the constituency of Christchurch West, and they set up a little babysitting firm, it should not be too much of a stretch to say that they could do business not only in Barbados, but that they should be able to do business throughout the Eastern Caribbean, in the same way that my friend from Christchurch West can practice dentistry as a graduate of the university right through the Eastern Caribbean. But we have, sir, to be prepared to see the opportunities. And one of the things that this legislation does is to create now a new set of categories so that there are more Barbadians who can be empowered and enabled to benefit from the opportunity to move freely. Mr. Speaker, sir, let us not underestimate the importance of this. Social care for the elderly is an avenue by which females in Barbados earn a living right across this country. If we look back at the last 10, 15 years, it is a sector of economic activity, sir, that has mushroomed. There's a whole ministry surrounding social care for the elderly. Mr. Speaker, sir, there are ladies who have tremendous expertise, not only hands-on, but experientially in terms of their day-to-day experience in caring for elderly people of Barbados. But Mr. Speaker, sir, none of them got none. Many would not have a university degree. Many, Mr. Speaker, sir, will not fall into any of the categories that traditionally have been allowed to move. But are we able to say satisfactorily to ourselves that we can continue to deny those people who have perfected and practiced that art in Barbados, in every single parish, from moving that skill and providing that skill and that service into other countries of the region? Mr. Speaker, sir, I think the answer to that is no. The same principle applies, sir, to all of the young men that are doing lawn and garden maintenance. It applies, Mr. Speaker, sir, to those people who are doing computer technician work. It applies, Mr. Speaker, sir, to the ladies who are doing cosmetology. There are literally millions of people across this region, and thousands of them in Barbados, who are occupied in areas where they're doing remarkably well, but are limited. Their opportunity to earn more is constrained and restrained because we have not opened the access to CARICOM to them. Now, Mr. Speaker, sir, that can't go on. And I want to say to you that when I say that there is a legal right enshrined in this document, the revised treaty of Chaguaramas, establishing the Caribbean community, including the Caribbean single market and economy, this, sir, created legal rights passed in this parliament. Mr. Speaker, sir, let me speak now, not as a politician, but as a lawyer. Rights. We can begin the journey by saying that you're going to have effectively a pilot project where you're giving a few categories of our citizens opportunity. But rights cannot remain selective forever. A right is not a right if it is only going to be given to a select few. It has to be given to all. And if I stop speaking like a lawyer, sir, and speak as an ordinary citizen, then, Mr. Speaker, sir, let me tell you that when I went to church as a little boy, I imbibed the book of Isaiah at chapter 10, verse 1, where it says, woe to those who make an unjust law, and woe to those who impose oppressive decrees that would withhold justice from the oppressed, my people. And Mr. Speaker, sir, that is what we effectively are now bordering on doing in this region. That for over 20 years, we have limited the category of worker who is able to go and make money next door in Trinidad, next door in Guyana, next door in St. Lucia. While at the same time, we have living amongst us, others, a select few, who are able to go next door in Guyana, next door in Trinidad, next door in St. Lucia, and make money and come back and laugh about it. Now, Mr. Speaker, so that can't be right. It can't be fair. And we have to correct that. So that A free market must literally be that. It can't be free market in name only. It has to be free market in terms of opening opportunities for all so that they can play equally in that marketplace and operate equally in that marketplace, subject to rules and regulations, of course. Now, Mr. Speaker, sir, the initial first step, therefore, which could be understandable, had begun to transform itself into a permanent state of contingency and a permanent state of exclusion for some of our citizens. That can't work, and that is why this government is standing in the defense of labor's interests, as we did only last week, Mr. Speaker, sir, in order to ensure that there are opportunities for our Barbadians abroad. Not everybody is going to want to move to go and find work. Not everybody is going to be able to. But, Mr. Speaker, sir, we can't stay here and pick and choose who will have ambition, who will not. We have to create the opportunity of a level field we have to create the opportunity for equality of opportunity and a level field for all of us in this country, bar none. Now, Mr. Speaker, sir, there are those who forget that, I think it was a Trinidadian Calypsonian Leroy Caliste, more affectionately known as Black Stalin. You know, he says that sufferers don't care who from country and sufferers don't care who from town. For that matter, sufferers don't care who from one political party or another. Sufferers only care where the next meal coming from. Now, for trade to work, as I said, there must be two sides of a coin. One is the aggressive side, the offensive side, and the other is a more defensive posture, where you protect. Now, Mr. Speaker, let's talk a little bit about the offensive and the aggressive side. We want for Barbadians to be able to get out there and have equality of opportunity in CARICOM. The honourable member struggled to remember the statistics. I will help him. Barbados enjoys a trade surplus with the Eastern Caribbean. It is the only part of the world that we enjoy a trade surplus with. 53% of the goods and services we produce in Barbados are sold into the Eastern Caribbean. That is where we make our money. I reject any notion that suggests that we should be making money in the Eastern Caribbean in a limited way and in a manner that only appeases the palate and the appetite of a few people in Barbados. It must be an equality of opportunity for all Barbadians. But, Mr. Speaker, sir, we cannot get there, and we cannot come to that point. We can't get, as Black Stalin would say, we can't let the sufferers get food unless there is, first of all, the employment opportunity, and secondly, the opportunity for training to equip our people to benefit from the opportunity. Now, Mr. Speaker, sir, there is obviously a need then to reflect on where we are with training. I hope I'm making this logical. Because if you're going to say the opportunity must be there, then our people must have the equipment in terms of training and qualification to be able to move in all categories. Now, Mr. Speaker, sir, where are we? We came to government, sir, and found a struggling, fledgling thing that some countries in the Eastern Caribbean had virtually perfected. It is called National Vocational Qualification Training and Community Vocational Qualification Training. I ain't coming here to get a long rambling rose conversation about yesteryear and cricket and music and poetry and all of that. Mr. Speaker, I feel the people of Barbados deserve to know how they can benefit and what they need. They need qualifications to move. Community Vocational Qualification, it is called a CVQ. Now, Mr. Speaker, sir, it therefore means that the training in CVQs is something that we must look at. Now, sir, Barbados, under this government, has come to a point where we now have centers established all around the country. I sit in this place across from the Ministry of Education, the Minister of Education. I want to congratulate this Minister of Education and the one who preceded her. Because, Mr. Speaker, sir, in Barbados today now we have technical vocational educational training centers established all across this island. Derek Smith School, Mr. Speaker, sir. Grant Lee Adams in St. Joseph. Queen's College in St. James. In fact, Mr. Speaker, sir, Queen's College just opened a brand new pavilion. I read about it when I was in Germany at the Munich Security Conference meeting. And I believe, sir, that the paving stones around that pavilion were made by students at the pavilion under the CVQ vocational training taking place at Queen's College. You understand why I tell you about Queen's College, Mr. Speaker, sir? That all of the talk about elitism, you're going to one of the so-called posh schools in Barbados. And Mr. Speaker, sir, community vocational training taking place there. Caribbean vocational training, Caribbean vocational qualification. Mr. Speaker, sir, at Combermere School, Leicester Vaughan, all of them, Ellerslie, Gorgon Parry, Dighton Griffith. But not only there, Mr. Speaker, we are doing the Caribbean vocational qualification, sir, at the Barbados Fire Service as well. The Barbados, I come into that, the Barbados Defense Force, sir. Mr. Speaker, sir, I was stunned. Because I don't know, public life has to be more, sir, than a tuck band. Public life, sir, has to be more than a tuck band and a lot of pretty posturing. I do not know how people could not know that the Barbados Workers Union Labor College is offering community Caribbean vocational qualifications, sir, but think that it shut down. But I do not know where you have been living and to what you have been paying attention. And you know, I feel, sir, that if you have extra money, don't take $10,000 to rent a tuck band. Put a few dollars of gas in the gas tank of your motor car and drive around the island to see what is happening. That's not the hardest thing to do. But Mr. Speaker, sir, they say that notwithstanding all that we are trying to do for these young people to create opportunities where they didn't exist before, they say, sir, that we are oppressive. Some are heard to say that we suppress legitimate ambitions and aspirations of people, Mr. Speaker. And I feel, again, you know, sometimes you have to test the validity of these allegations because I now know, I put myself to find out, the trouble to find out this morning, there are 8 schools doing horticulture in Barbados at Caribbean vocational qualification level and 7 doing crop production. Now, why is that relevant, Mr. Speaker? I'm talking about trade offense. How I get my people, how I get the people in my constituency, how all of us get the people in our constituencies to be able to benefit from economic opportunities next door in St. Lucia, Mr. Speaker, so that skilled workers in agriculture, in a country like Guyana, in a country like Dominica, which needs to have these type of people, in a country, sir, like the same Suriname that got poo-poo in here just now, Mr. Speaker, sir, which needs to have these types of training, people with these types of training, because they are the region's breadbasket. It means, Mr. Speaker, so that we position our young people futuristically for opportunity to move, an opportunity to benefit financially, and an opportunity to develop self-reliance. Mr. Speaker, commercial food preparation and catering. 15 schools in Barbados are offering the Caribbean vocational qualification in that. 15, Mr. Speaker, sir. Commercial food preparation and catering. Hospitality services and tourism is what this region turns on. And if we have young people who are being positioned not to go and be a menial worker in somebody's hotel, and we heard only last week how bad some of the workers in the hotel are treated. Don't mind that I haven't heard anything from anybody in the Democratic Labour Party on this matter. Not a voice has come out of George Street in support of the workers. But Mr. Speaker, sir, this is a region which is turning on hospitality services, tourism. It is a tourism and travel dependent region. Are you telling me that it is not a wise and useful thing that we now have 15 schools in Barbados looking at Caribbean vocational qualifications to empower our young people in the area of commercial food preparation and catering? Mr. Speaker, sir, 7 schools in Barbados are doing electrical installation at a time when this whole region is caught up with energy transformation. Photovoltaics, Mr. Speaker, a photovoltaic installation. This is what the community, the Caribbean vocational qualification is about. And then, as I indicated, Mr. Speaker, sir, cosmetology in a region which is now known globally for culture and fashion, entertainment, etc. So I say, sir, that sometimes I listen to the voices of the critics, and I think that they are distinctly unfamiliar with the developmental imperatives, the development requirements, Mr. Speaker, sir, which are necessary for unleashing growth potential. The only resource that Barbados truly has, sir, is our human resource. And that is why I say that I see trade from a posture of offense. How do we use and develop the opportunities for our people that they can enter other people's marketplaces in order to earn a living? No, sir. It is also important for us to look at the defensive posture, the other side of the coin. Because trade is also a tool, sir, which allows us to work on some of the fundamentals of national security, fundamentals, Mr. Speaker, sir, of our development. I don't ever come and talk about how we got to protect no sector and protect any aspect of our economy from competition. I feel you got to face competition. All of us live life and we face competition in our personal lives. The Honourable Member for Christchurch West carried my girl because he had more money to spend with the teenager than me. That was competition. He unbugged me, Mr. Speaker, sir. But I face competition. But sir, there are some imperatives. We are a country, sir, confronted by some serious challenges. Only last year, this House had to treat to them, one of which was national insurance and national insurance security, sir. I want to remind this House that it was the 17th Actuarial Review, which was laid here, I believe, in 2022, that indicated that at existing rates at that time, and, sir, that pension reform, pension provisions, sir, in relation to national insurance was not sustainable. You will remember that discussion nationally, sir. It was a discussion in which we didn't get no solutions put forward from the other side. Even those who were with us then and now elsewhere didn't want to voice part of the lips to speak on this matter. But sir, future generations would not be able to function without having to pay more to the national insurance, contribute more. And that was due, Mr. Speaker, sir, to a few key concerns. The first was the unfavorable population projections, the unfavorable economic projections coming out of COVID, and, sir, the reality of fewer contributions being made. Now, what is the relevance of that to where we are today in this particular debate, Mr. Speaker, sir? It is connected completely to the fact that we are also confronting in this country, and the population report from 2023 indicates it, that there's a fall in our average annual birth rate, sir, from 2,874 births every year to 2,214. At the same time, there is an increase in the annual average death rate, so that less people are being born and more people are dying. The figures with regard to deaths have moved from 2,538 to 3,349 annually. And that left a startling statistic and a projection that by the year 2050, 1 in every 2 Barbadians, Mr. Speaker, sir, will be over the age of 65. Now, we all live here, and we all have families here. And, sir, we got children, most of us do. So, Mr. Speaker, sir, what is it that we would be bequeathing to them if we don't find serious interventions? Now, I don't say this lightly. You can increase your population the very pleasurable and traditional way. But that, sir, is going to take a heck of a long time before those people can get to an age where they're earning anything. Better it is for a serious government to look at international trade regulations and international trade rules, like that which the Single Market and Economy Revised Treaty provides, and say, look, let us, as a posture of our own development capacity, ensure that we have some more people coming into Barbados so that they can contribute to national insurance, so that they can be on somebody's payroll and pay taxes, Mr. Speaker, sir. And what is the benefit of that? The benefit of that, sir, is that you get away from this threat of a dwindling tax base. You remove yourself from the situation where the few people you have are going to pay more and more to NIS and still have a very fragile and almost moribund NIS. And Mr. Speaker, sir, what do you get in return? You get national capacity. You get more salaries, better salaries. Now, I do not know of anybody in the public service, sir, that does not want a better salary paid by government. I've not met anybody in this public service that would not be happy to get a better salary paid to them by government. But it can only happen, Mr. Speaker, sir, if the revenue that we attract increases. That's not difficult. But, Mr. Speaker, that can only happen if we broaden the base of those who are taxpayers. Mr. Speaker, I go further. I do not know of anybody in Barbados who don't want better public health care. But public health care, as we will discuss in a couple of weeks' time in this House, public health care, sir, comes at cost. And the only way you're going to be able to improve the quality and the public health public health dispensation in Barbados is if you can meet the public health bill. And that, sir, can only happen with increased revenue by a broader tax base. Mr. Speaker, sir, unless, of course, you want to overburden those of us who are here already, which I think will be ill-advised. Education, another beneficiary, because all of us want to know that we have better schools. All of us want to know we have more schools. Well, Mr. Speaker, sir, you can only improve the quality of your schools if you're able to have a better public purse. And again, that can only happen if you're increasing the base of the tax of those people who are paying taxes. It is true of transport, it is true of public infrastructure, Mr. Speaker, the whole range of government services. Now, I do not know how it is that you come to a place like this to talk about the people's business and not engage on these fundamentals which arise directly as a result of the amendments we're making to the law. Because from our own self-interest as a country, we have a duty to speak to the people who sent us here. And the people who sent us here are concerned about these things. They're concerned, Mr. Speaker, sir, about the desire of better salaries. It is true to say, sir, that this government has increased salaries, sir, against all the odds, while those that we replaced found it impossible to do so. But yet still they leave us for that. Mr. Speaker, sir, it is true to say that our public health requirements are on the lips of everybody in Barbados, and that must be improved. But how you improve these things, sir, if you're not recognizing that it is only through initiatives such as this that we broaden the base of our taxpaying public? It is only through initiatives such as this, sir, that we strengthen our national insurance, as we must, by making sure that there's a broader base of contributions. So, sir, there are two sides to this debate. And whether you look at it from the perspective, sir, of empowering Barbadians in order to move to other people's countries in this region and to do business there in a manner that is not distinctly different from that which some of the elites who graduate University of the West Indies are able to do. If you believe philosophically in your heart of hearts, Mr. Speaker, sir, that the maid, domestic, that the private security guard, who incidentally, sir, the private security guard gets experience in basic training. The private security guard, sir, I have seen some from government, sir, working in government services. They're not private, they're public. I do not know, sir, that I could call them military commandos or trained militiamen. I don't know that they're taught to shoot anybody. I do not know, Mr. Speaker, sir, that they are trained in hand-to-hand combat. I see some who basically, Mr. Speaker, sir, quite frankly, look to me that their greatest strength would be the fact that they could position a well-proportioned belly in the way of a man who's trying to get away. But I hear this kind of idle chatter brought into the house, and it is the only house in the Caribbean, the only public square in the Caribbean, public place, that I have heard this kind of specious nonsense to put poison in the ear of people about how security guards could pose some sort of a quasi-military threat. It is beneath the dignity of this place, Mr. Speaker, sir. It is beneath the dignity of this place. Now, Mr. Speaker, sir, you have been very, very generous to me in terms of your patience and your time, and I will not trespass any further. I want to say, however, Mr. Speaker, in closing, that we can choose, sir, to treat to this as though it is some casual passing thing, or we can recognize that this is golden and glorious opportunity for us to make sure that we educate now our constituents as to the opportunities that exist. We bear in mind that there will be more categories that will be open, and that last year at the region's heads of government meeting in July, a commitment was given, sir, to advance the process, which is an ongoing work. Let me say that we will have full movement irrespective of who you are. That is the ambition. But as I indicated, Mr. Speaker, sir, there has to be questions of capacity. There have to be questions, sir, of us finding the money through a regional development fund, which we now have, sir, and to capitalize that fund in such a way that countries can say, I will build more schools, I will have more health opportunities to offer people who are coming. But Mr. Speaker, sir, we go as a region on this. The other thing simply is this. It is our opportunity to make sure that we take care of some of the issues we got in Barbados, a broader tax base so that we can give a better quality of life to our people. A stronger national insurance, Mr. Speaker. Those are the things that we have to deal with. And sir, if we can understand that, then I think that there's no difficulty in this. I am happy that there's been no dissent and no contest. But I believe, sir, that there must also be intellectual foundation as well. Because without the intellectual foundation, people, sir, will live in darkness. And darkness, sir, exists even in some places of high standing in this country. I am obliged to you.
Honourable Member for St. Philip North.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just a short intervention. I want to add my voice to the bill, which I must say up front that I'm in total agreement with. It has been around a little while now, and I'm in total agreement with the amendments, but just a few things to add or to suggest or to query that I want to present here. We are a community of, well, the CARICOM, some 18 million members, and I can only see the way forward in terms of how members cross from island to island to give back of what they know. I think it will boost our base in terms of learning, skills, everything, and it can only go to a better CARICOM community. And I also note that it includes movement of wage earners and non-wage earners, which I would allude to later, with or without a work permit. The benefits I see, we speak about brain drain and brain gain, and one of the positives is the brain gain that I want to get at first. And yes, as the honourable member who spoke just before me alluded to, that it can possibly increase the numbers to the workforce, which inevitably will increase the NIS benefit contributions, I should say, which makes sense. There's also the possibility of new and updated skills coming into the country, which certainly the knowledge base can go in both directions. We can lend to the rest of the region and the community. They can lend to us in terms of our knowledge base. The possibilities of collaboration, and the honourable member for St. Philip South was a champion in this area in terms of the associations with Guyana. I know he led a contingent, for want of a better word, to Guyana recently to upskill their workers in terms of building, I can't remember the term, but the what? Yes, those houses for the shade houses for our agricultural workers. The belly sheep is also a form of collaboration, despite the new opposition leader alluding to it. So this is nothing new in terms of how we approach it in Barbados. I remember years ago, I don't know if anybody in here could remember, when the Guyanese first come under great criticism from some of our locals, and they used to have agricultural practices that really did not even include insecticides, but they got to the culture of the Barbadians, and that has increased. And I thought that was a wonderful thing to learn from them, but we also taught them, so it kind of went in the reverse order. But these are things that we can learn from our neighbors, meaning the community. I want to put a plug in. The honorable member that spoke before me alluded to it, but this gives us the opportunity for training and certification of our locals, of our Barbadians. Traditionally, many of the carpenters and masons and joiners, the latter few and far between, have learned from apprenticeships from the neighborhood carpenter and all the other skills I just spoke about. And it would be a prime opportunity to educate the public in terms of having their skills certified. I know as the honorable member alluded to, the TVET Council, the SJPI is now assisting with that. You can actually have your skills certified after testing. Workplaces are now coming on board in terms of sending their staff who do not have the official documentation, but are skilled and just need a little certification that not only could improve the workplace in which they exist, but will make us equipped for traveling beyond the region. It allows for, and this is one of the things I think we falter as a government on, and not only this government previously, it allows for better succession planning. Right now, I can only speak of one ministry clearly, but there are issues in terms of, yes, we have an aging workforce. Yes, unfortunately, people are dying. But most of the time, we know who will retire and when to retire. And this can only help with succession planning. A lot of the ministries have this issue. One, for their own fault, but two, finding people to replace locally, to replace some of these professions and skills that we already have. On the other side of the coin, we spoke about brain gain, and I want to speak a little bit about brain drain now. And I reiterate here that I have no issues with the bill, for fear that I might be considered awkward. I am in full agreement with the bill. But we are at risk of losing, there's a possibility of losing skills, the skilled and the professional Barbadians. For example, we all know about the nurses. Over the last few years, and we are not unique in the region or beyond, we have a paucity of nurses. Nurses are leaving in droves. We had the same issue with the police officers at one time. I don't know if we put a stop to that. And the teachers, that's a very valid point. So in my mind, these are the things we need to look at. We have to ensure that our environment, work environments, physical environments, financial environments, are adequate enough and aligned enough that we can allow the smooth passage of workers between us, between the region, among the CARICOM community, into Barbados and out of Barbados. We, the nurses, I want to put a plug or a comment there. We need to offer the nurses incentives. Yes, I know that there have been recent increases in salary, which I'm quite grateful for. But compared to some other jurisdictions, I know for a fact, the salaries are way better. The privileges, when it says privileges, they're given housing, they're given care for the children. We're still way behind on that, especially nurses that work in shift system at night. We have issues with caring for the children. Other jurisdictions offer this. Insurance policies, health care, other jurisdictions offer this. I'm aware that the honorable member, I think it was at the time for St. George South, through the hospital, we had a housing fair for nurses there, if I'm correct. I can't remember if it was on the UES, which was a great initiative. But I later came to learn that a lot of the nurses could not actually afford, some of them on single parents, some of them just single, could not afford to pay for these houses, at least not by mortgage. So it wasn't very helpful, and I segue here in terms of housing. We are seeing a lot of people, and I know we just passed a bill through here recently, last Friday or last week, where we are looking at housing solutions and increasing them. But I want to say here that yes, it's supposed to be low-income houses, and yes, many of our workforce really cannot afford it. $150,000 may sound easy, not for me at the present, but for many of the members here. But for a janitor or maid, and I know of one personally, she's paying $800 a month, every month for rent, but does not qualify for a pension. Sorry, that's on my mind, but does not qualify for a mortgage. And something is wrong with that. Rent to own, if she is loyal in paying her rent every month for years, there is no reason that we cannot individually look at cases and offer even mortgages. A mortgage is rent, basically, to the bank or whatever lending institution, and make it so that individuals earning below a certain level can have rent to own homes. These are incentives that are offered in other jurisdictions. We have to compete. We have to compete adequately with that. I want to say here, talk about the police officers. We talk a lot in the House about what we're doing and public workers and how we're caring, but the police officers, if I leave here now and walk outside, and I want to say this for them, if I leave here now and walk outside into the real world, police officers are constantly complaining about salaries, constantly complaining about perks, if you want to use that word. Salaries are low. Insurance is not offered, especially in an environment, let me be nice and politically correct, where we are not doing our best in terms of crime prevention. Police officers need to be considered. At the end of the day, they are who protecting the parliament along with the security. And we need to have a real look, not just, and I can't even say it's lip service, because it's hardly ever mentioned, but they're crying out for some sort of assistance. While I look through my papers. And I want to put a little blame on them at this point, because we have to welcome both, let me use that word, not all, both genders into the police service. I spoke to a young lady today who had changed her career aspirations from being a police officer. She really wanted to do it. Went into the police, whichever district she went into. Started to fill out the form, and the officer behind the desk told her, "You're wasting your time. We ain't want no more women in here. Y'all just spend too much time with the children, are always out sick." After which she proceeded to fold the paper and throw it in the garbage. Of course, he threatened her with charging her because it's government property for throwing it into the garbage. So these are things that we have to kind of look in the mirror and see where we are going wrong. We really can't have that. So while I put a plug for them, they need to cooperate with me. But this is something, that we really need to look at. There is a fear, as whoever spoke earlier said, that people, on a culture really, that Barbadians believe that their jobs are at risk with movement, especially in the public service, and I'll tell you why. And this is something I believe that is in law or legislation or something. We have a situation where, no, I don't think it was like this before, but promotions are happening on the basis you could have 25, 30, 40 years experience in whatever area. And I know about teaching, like the honourable member that sits to my left. My whole family were teachers, more or less. And we have situations, not only in teaching, but other areas of government, where somebody has the experience, life experience, not coming out of UE with none, but experience in the job. And they're asked have a UWI graduate who will now earn about $2,000 more, depending on the profession, than them. And then a slap in the face by asking them to train these people. I'm not sure why we're doing in their case, Mr. Speaker, but I want to say it in the House. These are things we have to look at. You're talking about free movement, but yet we still have to protect, and it sounds bad to say, our workforce. These are things that need to be looked at. I really can't say I would do it. So you have a situation that I know of, that many people are resigning early, taking the early pension, despite the fact that it went up for a year for some, and it will even go longer. You worry about dimension in the workforce, but that's for another day at another time. But we have to look at things like that affect the people that have already had jobs here and are working. And I want to say again, we need to have our ducks in a row, so to speak. Take, for instance, healthcare. There are many Barbadians and non-Barbadians in the diaspora and beyond who I get calls almost, not too often, maybe once every 2 months. Somebody who has an illness that wants to come home and contribute, whether it be voluntarily, if they're a retired person or whatever, or for wages. But the first question to ask, does Barbados have this in the healthcare system? Will I be able to get medication here for this? And sometimes the answer is no, unfortunately. And that segregates a whole set of people that would like to come and contribute to the NIS and to the country, because everybody can work, but not necessarily well. And these are the things that I worry about. Yes, the estimates are coming. Yes, I know healthcare has been slowly improving. But if we want to talk about workforce migration and so on across the region, these are things, and beyond the region, because this takes the conversation beyond CARICOM, if you want to be honest with yourself. We have to look at the disabled community. The honourable member for St. James North is not here, and he would not burst his bubble, because I'm sure he will mention it at another time. But we have to make the country aligned to accommodate disabled people as well. I want to use this opportunity. I think I heard it, and please forgive me if I'm wrong, that the Most Honourable Carrie-Ann Eiffel just won a most prestigious award for her work with the disabled. I think it's the SABGA Award. I will stand correction, but I think I heard that on the way to Parliament today, and I want to congratulate her on that publicly. And we have to think, I want to call it the little big things. When people migrate here, when people move here to work, things like bank accounts. The horror that Barbadians go through to open a bank account. Imagine people that are moving through the country. We have to make these things workable. And I'm familiar with a situation now where we have the Chinese, for instance, came in, offering their services, which is wonderful, at no expense to us, but bank accounts prove difficult. And this is for locals and non-locals. It's just too difficult to do business sometimes here. So these are the little big things, or the big little things we need to look at. Finally, as I wrap up, and it might sound small, but we have to think about the cultural adjustments. As I said earlier, Barbadians used to, and they still do to some extent. I heard it up to this week. Then foreigners, and the honourable member that presented spoke about this. Then foreigners coming here to take away jobs. Then foreigners in the good. A lady told me that this week, and I bit my tongue to tell her not to tell her that my mother was Guyanese and taught half of the community up by me. I held it. It will come again another time. Come again another time. But people say that these foreigners are taking away the jobs, they're taking away the money, they're taking away the wives, they're taking away the husbands. Y'all brought it up, it's not just me. This is the mindset of some of our people, taking away the land, buying up the West Coast, no, buying up the South Coast, and I can't really disagree with that point, but this does not necessarily rest in CARICOM. This is beyond CARICOM. People are worried now about passing through the South Coast and not being able to relax their eyes on the beach. I had the opportunity to walk through a gap as nearly a little bigger than I am wide to get on the beach because a Lumen Hotel to my right, a Lumen Hotel to my left, and people are genuinely worried about these things. So that has one of the perceptions. The other thing is cultural influence. And I use the example here. Mr. Speaker, you remember when at some point Barbadians watch television, because we have all the channels now, and you would pass an electric pole and 40 million sneakers thrown over it? You remember a time that's still present where young fellas with a belt have the pants below the behind? This is cultural influence. You remember when we did not have gangs, at least not that we knew of? This is cultural influence. My daughter is now coming home to show me what gang signs she learned at school. Something wrong. Cultural influence. So at the same time, we have to be mindful of that. Yes, there are benefits to cultural intermixing. We've seen it in the islands, and it can only go a long way. Trinidad, black, white, Chinese, Indian, everybody. And it's a beautiful melting pot, and we have the opportunity to do that here. Culture, food. We have people that now can make it better. You can have a chef coming in. A lot of the hotels bring in foreign chefs, which sometimes is a bane to our existence because we may know people here who can do the job. But that serves as a good, potpourri really for the island. It can only help in terms of cooking and culture, and we could bring in engineers, and we could bring in so many different people that could show us how to do things that we did not know. Manufacturing can benefit. Let me use the example, because we know it best, of Guyana. Guyana went from a country of imports to a country where President Burnham refused to let them bring in flour. So they learned to do cassava flour and rice flour and all kind of things. Refused to let them bring in foreign jams and jellies, guava jelly, all kind of jelly, tamarind, gooseberry, whatever. These are things that Barbados can only benefit from. And we have to get past the thinking, them foreigners. A lot of restaurants here are now them foreigners that Barbadians enjoy. And the honourable member that, for Christchurch East spoke about propping up. Propping up in COVID, the overseas people, we realized that they're propped up. And while this is true to some extent, I can tell you that Barbadians stepped up and propped up. A lot of the times the restaurants. I remember during COVID, I went to one and it was all Barbadiana. All Barbadiana. So we serve the purpose in terms of propping up. So it's not only that, but we have to encourage our Barbadians. Yeah, we know about buy local, and we know about all of that, to be a part of the development of the country and the region, ergo CARICOM. UE, I want to say, I remember the Honourable Leader for the Opposition, my good friend that sits across from me now rather than beside me, mentioned UE in terms of professional training, the doctors knowing one another. And while that may be true, we have come to a point now, just for information purposes, that we get to mix and intermix and with the other professionals of the region through continuing medical education. And now it's opened up with the internet and Zoom programs and meetings and everything. So that's not necessarily at risk. But from that perspective, I understand, but that's not necessarily at risk, especially post-COVID. People have been meeting people online that they have never met in person, and it seems to work. So not to keep back anything, Mr. Speaker, I think there's something I wrote that I wanted to say, and I think the Honourable Member for St. James South will speak after me. I hope I was able to contribute something to the discussion on the bill. And I want to use something here that I saw recently, that I was described as a political non-entity. So I hope today I made a contribution that I will now become some sort of a political non-entity, and that my exit, which I have no plans of doing, what he said, feeling that my exit and others who were mentioned will only help the BLP significantly. I can show you it if you want to see it. But I hope that I will now not be considered a non-entity, and that I have contributed here today to the balance in the BLP and to uplift the BLP. And with those few words, I take my seat. Thank you very much.
Honourable Member for St. James South.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to thank the Honourable Member for St. Philip North for her speech, and to say she could never in any circumstance be a non-entity, political or otherwise. Today, I rise to support what is before us, strengthening the free movement of labour within our CARICOM space. And as a number of members have spoken, what has emerged is the fact that you have situations within Barbados and across CARICOM indeed, where citizens are feeling the squeeze for one reason or another. Either there's a difficulty in getting jobs. The Honourable Member for St. Philip North spoke about not being able to qualify for housing even though you have a job. People speak about the cost of living. They speak about the quality of health care and roads, etc. And so what has happened over the past 10 to 15 years has been a high level of financial and other stressors that have been placed on the population, has been placed on businesses. And this has affected family function. Families have become dysfunctional. And those pressures have placed heavy burdens on government in terms of responding to the need for welfare. It has also put pressures on the society in terms of crime and the rising level of abuse. And this is a challenge that forever countries, especially small countries like ours, will always face the continuing threat of pressures on the society and on the economy. So the question is, what do you do? A government, a responsible government, a creative government will always build out a strategy that will help to be able to deal with the pressures that are ongoing within an economy. And in order for that strategy to work, it is absolutely necessary that all people, whether it is your business sector, whether it's your government officials, your civil service, your families, your workers, your unions, everyone must understand the strategy by which you're going to get out so that they can put in perspective the initiatives which you put on the table. Today, before us, strengthening the free movement of labor is part of an overall initiative for breaking out the economy and allowing the economy to breathe and allowing families and businesses to be able to grow. The use of the trading bloc as a strategy is an important one. And what I want to do, Mr. Speaker, is to speak concerning the role that a trading bloc can play, the requirements that help it to work, and to be able to outline how it will help us address some of the economic pressures which we are experiencing in Barbados. When you're experiencing economic pressures, one of the most important things is that you have to expand the existing cake. You have to be able to take all of your economic strategies to help expand what people can participate in. And after expanding, you have to broaden access to the cake, because your economy can grow, but people may not be able to benefit because the distribution is unequal and there are disparities in the distribution. So it's important. So what does that mean? If you currently have 10 units in your cake and there are 5 members of the population sharing in those 10 units, then they only have access to 2. But if you develop a strategy for your trade and economic growth by inviting into your space investment, inviting into your space the capital, the labor, etc., you are able to expand your economic growth through trade, and the end result is that you might end up now with 100 units being produced. But now it is not a population of 5, it's actually a population of 10, because you had to invite people to come into the space, either as investors or you had to invite them as labor. But now they have access to 10 units of benefit as opposed to the 2 units that we had before. And this is the aim of every government. How can I expand the units of goods and services available to the citizens, that citizens can live out that best life? So in terms of access to the cake, in order to do that, you not only have to support the growth of your businesses, you have to balance your trade environment. And those are some of the things that we've been doing as the Barbados Labour Party, whether it is that we've sought to improve the ease of doing business, the trade facilitation, the improvements at the port, the electronic single window to quicken business transactions, etc. There are a number of things that we've put in place to be able to do that. Also, to improve access to the cake, you also need to have opportunities for government contracts. And that's one of the things that the Barbados Labour Party has put in place to allow more people to participate in government contracts. And then, of course, there's the public-private partnerships where we've worked looking at the TAP program, whether you're talking about the energy sector, where you're inviting Barbadians to be a part of that growth and development, or the marijuana industry. These are some of the things that we have put on the table. 2 things you need to do: expand the cake and provide access to the cake. And this is where your trading bloc now is extremely important in helping to make it happen. The issue, however, is that there are dynamics, there are forces that are going on within and without the country that actually press against your strategy. Sometimes even your own population can inadvertently be pressing against their own best interests because they don't understand what the strategy is about. So I just want to explain briefly a little about it and to explain what it is we're doing so that people can see the benefit of why free movement of labor is in our best interest and in the interest of all Barbadians, not just those who go, but also for those of us who stay. Let's imagine that there is a place where, a country where everybody was living in straw houses. As long as everybody is in straw houses, everybody is comfortable because nobody's house is different. But from the time you get a few members of that population beginning to build wooden houses, and you get that shift, the ones who remain in the straw houses all of a sudden become very discontented. They want to get into a wooden house too. So what happens? People in straw houses find that they don't have enough money to be able to afford the wooden house, so they start to press for more wages. Because fewer people want straw houses, the builders of those types of houses now begin to contract because nobody wants the straw houses anymore. So you're going to have a decline in that particular industry. The people in the wooden houses want to continue to live in them and also furnish them nicely, so they too will press for more wages. So the pressure of wages from populations in the straw houses and the wooden houses is going to result in a rise in your cost of living. And that continuous rise in the cost of living will keep creating that circular problem of the pressure and the demand for more wages. Another interesting thing that will happen is that as you import the wood, it means that the people who actually produce the straw domestically, their business will also go under. So that is where you have that scenario of continuous economic pain and continuous economic pressure within a society because you have this dynamic that is shifting. So what is it that a government needs to be able to do in order to cope with it? Because in that scenario, the jobs that the workers in the straw houses have no longer can serve their best interests, so they want to leave those jobs. And in Barbados, we've seen that in the area of agriculture. We've seen that in the area of some construction at one point. And then we also were experiencing it, started to experience it in relation to the hotel industry. And that's one of the ones that we want to plug because we need our workers to be in the hotel industry. And we have to ensure that they get a decent wage in order to make the most important industry in our economy to continue to be viable and for them to be a part of it. So what do you do when you have those pressures? There are certain industries that cannot afford to respond to higher wages because it takes the product or good well out of its realm of demand. And it would collapse that particular industry if you were to take it to a wage that the population or the citizen or the consumer is not prepared to expend to get it. I remember a homeowner told me about going into the supermarket and picking up a package of spinach, which usually has in maybe about 20 leaves. It's a little flat thing. But the price on it was $17. Now, the person immediately put it back. Why? They're not prepared to pay $17 for a small package of spinach. While they will pay that $17 to go and get a snap box, they're not prepared to do it for spinach. So there are just some jobs that cannot carry large wages. Otherwise, you will create a collapse of the industry. And agriculture happens to be one. And this is the reason why you have to build out a strategy where you can import the labor that can sustain your agricultural production so that you can maintain your food security, and other areas of business endeavor that require labor at a certain price point. You attract labor in that area. At the same time, and this is the trick in economic driving, at the same time, you have to create the conditions in which your economy is attracting higher paying jobs, and you are providing the training and the education for your citizens to acquire the skills to match the demand for labor in those new investments. And that is why we were here last week, why the concessions bill was important. You want to attract quality labor, quality investments that offer people good wages. You then cannot allow people to come and reduce the wages and the working conditions of people. You have to go after the higher quality investments so that your citizens who are leaving some of the lower paying jobs can go onto a platform where they can get better wages so they can afford the lifestyle that they want to pursue as a family. And that's important. So how do you balance out those dynamics? By the effective use of your trade blocks. Because trade blocks will give you an opportunity to sell more goods. They'll allow you to build economies of scale. It will lead to better pricing so that the consumer satisfaction is greater because their money can stretch more. It allows you to attract the foreign direct investment. It leads to the expansion of your domestic production and the generation of jobs, good-paying jobs that take into account the skills of your people. This is what your trade bloc will do. And why should Barbados pursue that? Sir, the majority of countries, over 100 countries and more, now operate in trade blocs. If we don't get into trade blocs to be able to safeguard a space for our goods and services, then we are consigning Barbadians to a level of poverty that they have not seen in a very, very long time. For example, you have a regional grouping of countries in an economic partnership in Asia. There are 15 of them. China is a part of it, Malaysia, Japan, and they've also added New Zealand and Australia, and they command something like 30% of the gross domestic product of the world. The EU is a grouping with 27 countries because they're trying to safeguard a space for their goods and services and the jobs of their people. The US partnership between the USA, Mexico, and Canada, they control 17% of the GDP of the world. And then across in Africa, you have COMESA, with about 21 African countries working together, seeking to build opportunities for economic growth for their citizens and their enterprises. Now, if these countries, who are so much bigger than we are, need it, how much more we? It is so very important for us that we're able to enter into blocks. And this is the reason why, Mr. Speaker, Barbados has been seeking relationships with different countries, different parts of the world, and this is one of the reasons why we've established embassies in places such as Africa, we've established them in Latin America, we've established them in Panama, and we are also established in Ireland. Because what is the job they have to do to help to build the relationships and the opportunities that will allow us to be able to build trade and to build cooperation? This is one of the reasons why the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade has focused more on Latin America, CELAC and the Association of Caribbean States, so we can build relationships in Latin America. That is important. But blocks are not only important just for the business of trade. Blocks are critical as an arena in which you can develop cooperation and collaboration to be able to improve the conditions of your economic engagement. And why is that important? Because our past history shows that the colonial powers, by setting up the economic conditions of the world to suit and accommodate their benefit and their value to the detriment of smaller countries, they now have and maintain a chokehold on the critical elements that will determine whether we live or die as small developing nations. Colonial powers hold a stranglehold on financial institutions, on access to capital, on technology, on research, control over intellectual property, over transport, the rules of trade, and all of these are positioned and structured in a way to continue to give the bigger, more developed countries an advantage over developing countries. And that is what we fight every day. That's the battle that we have to confront. And the only way sometimes to escape and loosen the chokehold, Mr. Speaker, is to put yourself in trading blocks, build alliances, build collaboration, so that you can start to negotiate and push for better conditions or create alternative ways to reach your destination. And that is one of the reasons why the Bridgetown Initiative has been so critical and has been so important. So if the trade bloc is the part of your strategy for loosening the chokehold of the international, the big developed countries internationally, and it's also the means by which you're going to open up your economy, then the requirements or the terms or conditions that are necessary to make a trade bloc work must be achieved. Without that, the trade bloc cannot do the work that you are expecting it to do. And there are a number of things that the trade bloc has to meet. Movement of capital, free movement of goods, movement of labor, and to be able to provide rights to the persons in that space so that they're not disadvantaged, but rather they can comfortably and safely move to different parts of the trading bloc to get the very best opportunity for them and their families. So what is it that the government of Barbados, the strategy that we've used to be able to meet these requirements? And I shared with you that one of the things that we've sought to do is to improve the conditions for the expansion of trade. We've also sought to expand our business sectors. Barbados is embarking on a BioLife program, which Export Barbados under the leadership of then Minister Davidson Ishmael and now by Minister Marsha Cadell. They have been working on the Export Barbados to help create the growth in the manufacturing sector. If we're going to take advantage of the CARICOM space, we have to grow our production. We've also had growth in tourism under the leadership of the Honourable Member for St. Michael West Central. What we've also done in order to be able to help create the conditions and expand the pie is we have sought to put in place probably one of the most transformative initiatives that we've embarked on, and this is the education transformation, and that's being led by the Honourable Member for St. Philip West. The education transformation program has to expand opportunity, and it also has to provide the avenues for better distribution of the opportunities in the economy. And how do we achieve that? On the tertiary education side, we've been working assiduously to be able to set in place improvements in how we deliver tertiary education, because we want to turn learners into skilled workers. And so there's been a tremendous emphasis that has been laid in education by the Honourable Member for St. Philip West on the technological and vocational training. And so a number of our institutions have been accelerating what they have been doing. I've been holding meetings with a number of these entities, and I'm amazed at the number of things that are actually happening that sometimes the public doesn't have the opportunity to hear what is being done. But we have, for example, at the SJPI, Samuel Jackman Prescott Institute, they've been doing great work in terms of construction, the photovoltaics, but the one that particularly caught me is they are working at helping auto mechanics to prepare to be able to deal with electric cars and hybrid cars. I had the opportunity just this week to sit in on a class and to see the students who were actually learning how to do this. What you're doing is making sure that as industries begin to fade and fall, what you're doing is you're helping the workers to transition to the new technologies now so that they can continue to earn and earn well. And so that has been important. Another interesting experience was in animation and coding and the 3D printing that I saw at SJPI, where the students are engaged, the students are excited and stimulated by these new methods of training and these new areas of training that capture their imagination much better than what we were teaching them before. And so they're eager and internalizing it. So I sat through a presentation on the Powerpuff Girls as a cartoon and animation. And they were teaching how do you arrive at being able to develop the Powerpuff. But one of the most important things that we're doing for our economy right now, Mr. Speaker, is that we've been busy attracting businesses who have been helping us to be able to train people in cybersecurity and to train us in artificial intelligence, attracting high quality jobs, paying excellent wages to our people. And this will bring hope to Barbadian citizens. The other major plank is the Barbados Construction Gateway Training Initiative. Over 4,000 students are going to be targeted this year that will allow them to build the construction skills that are needed, that they can participate not only in the construction boom that will happen here in Barbados, but will also happen in places like Guyana, etc. So we are preparing our people. One of the things, however, that we recognize that we have to do while we're trying to increase the supply, we must make sure that the supply that we are providing matches properly the needs of the business sectors. And that is why we will be hosting some sessions with the private sector to make sure that that match has occurred well so that we have a free flow of students coming from out of our tertiary institutions and moving into good paying jobs so they too can look forward to living the best life. So while you are doing that and transitioning them, it is going to be important, Mr. Speaker, to bring in the other labor where you're going to have the shortage so that you don't get a collapse of your economy. That is what we are doing with this piece of legislation today. That is why the free movement of labor is important, so that we bring a balance across the economies, filling the spaces that need filling, so that economies can safely grow. And this is important. And everybody is doing this. US and Canada, they're doing it, attracting farm labor where they need it. England is trying to pull hotel workers from here and people to work on farms. The US is trying to pull our teachers and our nurses. And what we have to do is to make sure that we work at not only producing them, but finding the right conditions to be able to retain what we need even if we sell a surplus to them, but we must not end up with a dearth. So this is important. So, sir, there is a lot that is going on within education. We've issued something like 1,500 skilled national certificates since 2018 through the Barbados Accreditation Council. They've actively improved the speed at which they are processing these certificates. You can now get them in 2 to 3 weeks. And shortly, they're currently working on the Barbados Quality Credit Framework. Because if you have people moving across the region, how do you know what is the equivalency of people's certification? Is the college equivalent to our college degree? Is this particular certificate equivalent to what somebody studies here? And therefore, you have to build out a credit framework where you can lodge each of those qualifications so that an employer has the assurance that when he accepts a particular qualification, he knows exactly what the person can deliver. And that is another thing, sir, that will add tremendous acceleration to the acceptance of the CVQs and MVQs and create the growth and certainty for for business to employ the labor which we turn out. I also want to mention the good work that's being done by TVET. They do something like 300 on average, about 300 CVQs annually, the training and so on. They really are doing very good work in relation to making sure people are qualified and turning people's work experience into some form of certification. And that is important. And we've been building relationships with a number of external universities, but there will be another time to speak to that. I just want to end with this thought. If we can ensure a good supply of labor, then we're going to be able, at the right price point for each industry, then we're going to be able to attract investment, good investment. And it's going to give us the good wages that Barbadian workers want. And all of this will lead to the expansion of our businesses and our export trade. Once that happens, there's more consumption of our goods and services, more homes, more cars, etc. And all of our businesses will thrive. Our government revenues will increase. And so government will be able to sustain the social services that are so important to the Barbadian public. So this is why we need to cooperate with the program that the government has on the ground. I want to say, sir, and this is something that before I came into politics, when I recognized that the skill in managing an economy is absolutely essential for the well-being of every citizen. I wish citizens could understand and appreciate that it is not the person who makes you laugh the most or buys you the most drinks or whatever that matters. What matters is the person skillful in the management of government affairs. And one of the things that I am proud of in the Barbados Labour Party is that our party, whenever you examine our history, you always see that there is a competence that we bring to government. There's a creativity that we bring to the initiatives which represent our people. And all of that because we are a party with a vision and a plan as to how we're going to get Barbados there. And I want to say to Barbadians, to stay the course. I want to say to Barbadians, examine closely, ask the questions, but understand your best interests. And Barbados will prosper and benefit from this amendment today. It will prosper and benefit from CARICOM if we understand the importance of the free movement of labor to be able to balance off our economy. I'm obliged to you for the time, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Member for St. Michael East.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I believe that the free movement of labor is more than a narrow definition as we are hearing it today. I am fully conscious that when people speak, they speak within the context of the of a post-British colonialism. That seemed to govern their thoughts throughout the entire debate itself. I've been hearing about relationships between Guyana, cheap labor, and some businesses cannot function without cheap labor. To me, that brings the question of exploitation to mind. If you're going to tell me, and I like to do my own interpretation, extrapolation from the discussions, you're really suggesting to me that Guyanese are suitable for agriculture because it is cheap, productive labor. You're an advocate of exploitation, abuse, to advocate that. What you should be suggesting to us is that there is also a chance to implement.
I'm raising a point of order, sir.
Honourable for questions.
I think the honourable member is well-intentioned but misleading this chamber. I never indicated anything even almost closely resembling that. Had I done it, I think that the honourable leader of the opposition would have torn me apart in that. The fact that he did not even pick at something like that would suggest it did not happen. I was quite plain to say that it happens that the bulk of persons who are entering agriculture in Barbados are Guyanese. I made a point that in my own constituency, that is my reality. It was no reference at all or suggestion to the exploitation of anyone. CARICOM skill national certification and the ability to move in these categories is not aimed at exploitation, it's aimed at enfranchising. Slavery is done. There was no suggestion by anyone who spoke that that is the case, sir, and I would ask the honourable member, please, to remain true to the debate.
Mr. Speaker, you know there was no reference to this member who plead guilty. I was speaking to a comment that was made by the Honourable Sandra Husbands, member for St. James, about them little technical things. She said, sir, excuse me, man, I said it no. She said that there are some types of labor and businesses that require cheap labor. I use my own interpretation of that. There was no reference to the honourable member that now gets up and speak. I didn't see that flaw in his presentation. I saw it in hers. And it was
I remember you're suggesting, hold on, I don't remember. You are putting an interpretation of what was said by an honourable member for St. James South. You are saying that she never said that, but you are interpreting what she said to mean that.
I didn't say it. The honourable member.
Not the honourable member from Christchurch East. Honourable, please listen.
He started with the first person singular.
Honourable, I am speaking. Please listen.
I wasn't speaking about him.
No, I understand, but you just referenced the honourable member for St. James South, correct? South. Am I correct in hearing you saying that? That she made a reference.
Yes, but she did not object.
No, but hold on, sir. Hold on. I remember. But you're interpreting what she said. That's your interpretation.
Yes.
Not that she said it, correct?
Of course.
Continue on, remember.
Okay. That was my understanding of it. And sometimes clarity is fundamental. It is the problem that we have with the Caribbean integration movement. Because let me tell you this. Barbadian students study in Cuba. And when Barbadian students come back here, there are all types of inhibitions placed in the way of Barbadian students who do medicine in Cuba. And they cannot practice. So after you go, and I'm outside of the British Caribbean now, outside the post-British Caribbean. When you study there and you come back here, up to now the policies of the state has not adjusted itself in a proper way that allows them for reintegration after going and studying for a number of years in Cuba, in a country that has one of the highest rates for health services and medicine. The students now all over the Caribbean. So the integration process is still evolving into maturity. That is the point I want to make, and I have to put it in early because I don't want to lose contact with the guidance that I'm trying to give, if you believe that I can give guidance. Now, I will say to my friend, from the leader of the opposition, who I'm always happy to see, that I strongly believe, and I know he could have done better, I don't know why he did it, he needs to prove, or he needs to strengthen the proof of his thesis. When you said that you are not being critical, but you are offering a challenge. I believe that by the time I listened carefully, and I was hoping that rather than speaking about what occurred in 1958 to 62, during the period of the Federation, with the struggles between Grantley Herbert Adams, the then Premier of the Federation, and Manley, and Bustamante, and Eric Williams, that gave rise to the reduction of the strength of the Federation as a result of Jamaica withdrawal. And then I thought it would have made, and I will go a little further on that. There was internal problems in Jamaica that affect the regional integration process itself. Because Manley and Bustamante were struggling for leadership. They had already established trade union movements. So the marriage that we saw through the Caribbean for the development of the whole Caribbean Federation, the fusion between the politics and the union itself existed there. But although it existed there, you had the tug of war. And that led then to the behavior of Eric Williams, who then made the statement, 1 from 10 leaves nothing. And it came right down to the little 8. Trying to save the Federation. So there was always challenges, even in culture, even in sports, in the region. You had Jamaica establishing a big statue in Kingston of Sir Frank Worrell, the first black man to lead the West Indies cricket team. But you know, when we were talking about it today, you know, when Bolt was running at the international level, the entire Caribbean was behind Bolt. But I heard murmurs in Barbados when we intended to name a stadium after Bolt. Objections. That is even stronger. Because at least you murmur, sometimes you keep it in a small group. But objections. I was saying, those are 2 simple examples of why we are now here. And all I was suggesting, but including Cuba, and including our attitude to Cuban students, is to show you that although we are a good distance from where we were then, we still have not traveled far enough in a short space of time. But I strongly believe, sir, that by now we should be talking about a Caribbean integration that embraces Cuba in a meaningful way. If you had the full, I'm talking about not just pragmatism, because anytime a government is driven exclusively by pragmatism, it means that you're not changing anything. Whatever the practice and considered to be best practices, you're just following it. Pragmatism is a kind of ambiguous philosophy. I don't even know if it is worthy of being called that. What is required in the Caribbean is a sound ideological position and correct leader of the opposition on what is our mission. What do we have to do to achieve what we set about to achieve? And therefore, you can't be reading textbooks from Germany and Britain. You still have to make connections with C.L.R. James and Garvey and these people who discuss the sociology and the philosophy of the region itself. You would not have the problems that we have, even in cricket. Because when people love cricket bad, Caribbean people. But if one island gets more players for the team, people refer to the problems as nationality. There's no strong basis for seeing us as one solid economy or one solid society across the entire region. So we are constantly struggling with an integration process, and sometimes the integration process is negated as a consequence of an internal local problem. So I really believe that some of these issues need to be addressed. False philosophies that people speak about, I'm still talking about the labor issue. I don't believe that we always have to have cheap labor, especially in agriculture. It's a model that came, well, we go back to even the early plantation system or slavery, because it might soon tell me they call this word slavery, they take too often. Black people like to tell so. But it's an old model. Free labor, move to cheap labor. Why can't you come up, if these people can make profits and own so much out of free labor and cheap labor, why they cannot, even if the wages initially, or whether it's wages, salary, or bonus, or what, why can't we have a model, or why can't I hear a debate talking about profit sharing? That after you exploit labor in the way in which you're talking, because I hear people, this thing is about, well, it is, I lost track of what the subject matter was about the integration law. Like I hear all kinds of things. This discussion carried me. This was a real migration debate in truth. Everything went all over the place, sir. But why can't somebody suggest to us that we need a model where you get workers' participation? So even if you run the place, offer cheap labor, pay cheap labor every week and every month, but before they used to get bonus, they're doing that model going through the window. But at the end of the year, these people end up with a profit even if government helps substitute the development of the sugar industry. Get a profit. But some of the profits can be turned over to labor too. I think that we should be at that level because we're talking about integration. These are issues that must be touched. How can you have Venezuela? All the relationships that develop with Venezuela. All the relationships that develop with Cuba. All the arguments about the Caribbean is enclosed by all the shores where the Caribbean Sea wash, but they don't discuss nothing about integration with these people. This government, or any future government, should be looking at broadening the integration process beyond the traditional countries that belong, so-called countries that belong to Britain. We should be trying to persuade other countries that hanging on to the people in Martinique, hanging on to the people in France still, the people in Guadeloupe. The same way the Americans felt after they had the 13 seaboard states that they need to put in place the Monroe Doctrine for the expansion of the United States of America. How are we going to survive trying to have closed shops across the region, and now you're dealing in a capitalist market, or mega capitalist market, where other countries imposing things on us and we cannot even resist it. Countries got 10 men in an army. And talk about they got an army because the Americans call what they have an army, you call it, we got an army to what? Army what? There's a lot of dysfunctional things occurring across the region. But if you have an ideological base, a common one, you will have what the leader of the opposition said. You have purpose. You're doing things for particular reason. But this little piecemeal thing that I see in piecemeal thing here all the time, you do a little piece, this here, a hairdresser get something to do, and then you talk it sweet and rubbing your chest and feel like you're doing something great. Anyway, you ain't doing nothing great. We have to be on a mission. While I support the attempt to move forward, I am saying that at this stage we need to make leaps and bounds. We hear people out of the university as indicated, for educational purpose, can travel across the region freely. Artists can travel across the region freely. But we have to find a way that the same way that Caribbean people move all across the island, if the British decide it is all right, we have to make it free. People would adjust themselves across the region. People live where they want to live across the region. But as long as you have these distinctions of the Caribbean, where one group of people believe this is our land. I can't let Barbadians live here. People who understand the history of the region know when Barbadians went to Guyana. People who understand the history understand when Barbadians went to Vieux-Fort. And they had the rigidity. They had the rigidity that they now face. People understand when things were hard. Where people even story from ships going up to Panama, the Panama Canal and Costa Rica. The place is riddled with positive examples. And the only reason, and that's why I'm so happy that I started by making reference to Cuba, there's a mental block of what constitutes the Caribbean. Honourable Leader of the Opposition, I was hoping that you would expand, because I know that you know. So I was a little surprised at you. Nobody be accused of supporting the Leader of the Opposition, but I am speaking my mind freely, right? And it's my position, and I say it to my brothers and sisters without malice. And the faster you all understand that there are people who in politics that hold a different view about how the country should develop, it has nothing to do with contempt. Sorry, almost say, oh, we're foolish people, always believing that somebody trying to get them. I don't want to get nobody where you could go now. Huh? I just want people to learn that sometimes many things that follow, they follow, you know why? Because not everybody so obsessed with self, so obsessed with subjectivity that they can't respect another opinion. People who ain't went to school too long sometimes feel that they're bright and believe that they could joke over serious business for entertainment. And that is the problems that we have here. The integration process, some of the things I hear people talk about here, I was asking my friend, the doc, said to me, help me to understand the word relevance. People talk potatoes, talk about immigration, talk about potatoes. Somebody talk about something else. And they saying, but how they get this thing knit together? I can't understand. It was a cruel, naughty thing, not even an embroidery, sir, that all of us could enjoy because of its beauty. I probably am also giving a lumpy presentation, or a presentation with also chunks that some people hope to assemble to make something holistic. But I believe that I am capable of making equally, if not far superior, a contribution to the development of Barbados than many others in this house. They only warm the benches for money. So don't. My man had to spell out a word just now because he thought, sir, I went to say, sir, I went to say something, sir, but I wasn't too sure if I could spell the word. I saw the honorable member for Christchurch did some kind of jargon, so he spelled it to you, but I'm not going to try to, sir. But the integration process is vital to the Caribbean, not to Barbados alone. All I'm saying, there must be an underpinning of the mission, which is grounded in clear philosophical thought. I made the point about labor and capital. I have never been a supporter of capital because I don't believe in any country running always favorable. I believe I've been a victim of capital already. I know how capital has influenced people, and I know how it's coerced people into doing things that is unexpected. But it's very important, sir, for you to get this thing right, and you can't get it right if you're hopping all over the place and not having some clear understanding of what a government is trying to achieve. No harsh language. I can't coach harsh language in colloquial or in standard English. If you had to hear harsh language from me, sir, it'd be very colorful and maybe you ram shot close to my heart.
Not in here.
But I fully realize that, sir. Right, so I'm just telling you for the state of clarity. So nothing that I say is supposed to be interpreted as being harsh or anti-party or anti-anybody. I strongly support whatever instruments come to this house when I believe they are correct. All I'm saying is that we can do better than that. I was trying to respond to a contribution which I felt had some worthwhile value that should have given guidance to some of the other persons who were speaking. And I'm just suggesting, sir, that progressive people need to share progressive ideas and not be involved all the time in trying to obstruct common sense, not even intelligence. So, sir, I just want to enter the discussion to make those brief remarks to you, sir. And I hope that as my sister from the constituency of St. Philip said, I hope that I have made some valuable contribution in this kind of environment, sir. Thank you very much.
I'm for Christchurch East.
I get tired.
Mr. Speaker, I raise to wrap up quickly, and in doing so, I will simply address two concerns raised by the Honourable Member for Christchurch South. Sir, the Honourable Member raised some concerns about security officers being included among the persons, and because of their, he used the word military. I don't think their training actually goes as far as that, but he used the word military training, and eye should be kept on them as they're likely or might be in a position to cause some strife or conflict within our country and our space. Sir, I wish to assure the Honourable Member that the Immigration Department does not act in a willy-nilly fashion. For every person that lands in Barbados, before they land here, sir, we already know whether we're looking for them. Sorry, I say we, because I operate so closely with the Immigration Department. But the Immigration Department already knows if the person is a person of interest, if they've been flagged as a person of interest in any country in the world, if they're on a watch list, they can pull up their antecedents, and there's a reason why they're flagged. People don't understand necessarily coding on the slips you get. I won't go into that, but I wish to assure the honorable member that we take our border security exceedingly seriously in Barbados, and the scrutinies will be done not just because a person occupies that position as a security officer, but the scrutiny is done at the highest level for all persons entering Barbados. I just wish to make the other point in relation to that, sir, that yes, there have been concerns before raised about persons being able to come into Barbados and commit crimes. But I would hazard a guess, sir, that somebody looking to come into Barbados and commit an offense and leave is not going to be trying to come under a skilled national certificate when, if they're from the Caribbean, they get an automatic right of entry for 6 months if they're admitted into Barbados. So I don't think that concern is placed within this debate, and I just thought I'd assure my friend that I have knowledge that he might not because of my peculiar position as a minister with responsibility for immigration, and I can assure him that our checks, our background checks, are tight in Barbados. So he need not worry himself on that count. The other thing, sir, the question was raised as to why we don't further enhance the production of black belly sheep in Barbados as opposed to exporting them to other places. There are 28,000 acres of agricultural land in Barbados, sir. And that agricultural land is split between livestock, some solar energy, crop production, sugarcane production, and also grass for feed for the animals. We are not in a position to take our black belly program much further in Barbados. We just don't have the space. So which is why we are looking at the synergies and the cooperations with other countries who do have the space to expand that part of our agriculture. It will still be Bajan black belly sheep. They'll be grown somewhere else and then exported from there, or the meat exported as Bajan black belly sheep, with the profits still returning to the Barbadian farmers. And the arrangements that we have with those countries, sir, are not only for the supply of the land, but the land, the farmers, the workers can all move seamlessly to effectively have a Barbadian farm on land in another country because we actually don't have the capacity here. So that is why there's no push on, and I got this information from the Minister of Agriculture, that's why there's no serious push on to expand the black belly sheep production in Barbados, because we just don't have the land space to do it. And it can be easily and better done somewhere else. So, sir, with those clarifications, I hope I've answered the questions raised by the Honourable Leader of Opposition. With those clarifications, sir, I beg to move that this bill be read a second time.
Question is that this bill be read a second time. All those honourable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it.
Sir, I beg that you do not leave the chair and the House resolve itself in the committee for further consideration of this bill.
Question is that the Speaker do not leave the chair and the House resolve itself into committee for further consideration of this bill. All those honourable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it.
This Honourable House is now in committee.
Mr. Chair, I beg to move that clause 1, Sam Park.
The
question is that clause 1 stand part. All honorable members in favor, say aye. Honorable members against, say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Clause 2.
Mr. Chair, I beg to move that clause 2 stand part.
The question is that clause 2 stand part. All honorable members in favor, say aye. Honorable members against, say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Clause 3.
Mr. Chair, I beg to move that clause 3 stand part.
The question is that clause 3 stand part. All honorable members in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Honorable members against, say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Clause 4.
Mr. Chair, I beg to move that clause 4 stand part.
4 stand part. All honorable members in favor, say aye. Honorable members against, say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Mr. Chair, I beg that you do not report this under the Speaker to pass on one bill in committee.
The question is that I do not report to His Honor the Speaker the passing of one bill in committee. All honorable members in favor, say aye. Honorable members against, say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Chairman of committees has reported the passing of one bill in committee.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that this bill be read a third time.
Question is that this bill be read a third time. All those honorable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that this bill do not pass and be cited as the Caribbean Community Movement of Skilled Nationals Act, Cap 186A.
Question is that this bill be passed and post-cited. All those honorable members in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it. This bill is passed and cited. Honorable Acting Prime Minister.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. That brings us to the end of today's proceedings. And I hereby want to move that we adjourn today and have our next meeting Tuesday, the 27th of February at 10 a.m.
Question is that this honorable chamber be adjourned until Tuesday, the 27th day of February 2024 at 10 a.m. in the forenoon. All those honorable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it.
I just want to add, Mr. Speaker, that is the day in which estimates will begin.
Understood, honorable member. This House stands adjourned until Tuesday, the 27th day of February 2024 at 10 a.m. in the forenoon.